Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday Night Live show. Tonight we have a full house. We're going to be discussing the Dr. King webinar with AVM, and we have Dr. Charles Gardner as our guest, and also Phillip Kirschberg as our other guest. And as usual, we have John and Tim and Paul here. So, how's everybody doing? How you doing today, John?
I am doing excellent. I wish it would just fucking stop raining. Just stop raining in Modesto. Please, we've had enough. That's it. I'm done.
How you feeling, John? Tell us.
And one more thing. I want to get this off my chest because, I don't own a dog. I've never owned a dog. Well, it's been years since I've owned a dog. But you know what? The worst feeling is stepping on dog shit on your own lawn when you don't own a dog. And I'm done. I'm done.
I'm going to get on that HOA page and complain.
I am going to move my security cameras to my lawn, and I'm going to find out whose dog this is because I ruined a perfect pair of boots today, and I'm pissed. So that's my thing. That's it. That's all I got.
Well, I'm sorry about your
What if
day,
the person
John.
with the dog is much bigger than you?
I don't care. It had to have been the size of that shit I didn't see.
How about you, Tim? How's your week going?
Good. It's been busy. I feel like I've been on the move since I got back from my trip last week, but had a little fun on Friday night. Got all gussied up to go out, which is not normally me. So that was fun. I kind of had to wear some fancy clothes. So everything I own is either, everything I own is either.
Tim suited up, baby. Yeah. He suited up.
You were going to see a band that had a really interesting name. Was this that?
No. Okay. This is my friend's band Departure. So it was a fundraiser for an organization called Sunshine Kids, which benefits kids with cancer and their families. So it was a fundraiser kind of pitched as a gala. And yeah, there you go. Look at that. So what I did was I married the two worlds of rock and roll and gala events. So I cuffed
Fabio
up the jacket.
wept
there
on
you go.
This one. You look
there
great.
You go. Got the handkerchief from the back, had the chain wallet on, the whole nine. But so I was talking to my friend who plays bass in the band, and I'm like, "Hey man, is this like really a dress up event?" And he's like, "Oh, you'll be fine." He's like, because his wife and it was her birthday, and all of her friends were gonna get all dolled up. And he goes, because Julia just wanted to be swanky, and I'm like, so, okay, so what do you mean? I'll be fine, or should I just play along? And he goes, or should I wear whatever? And he goes, well, whatever you wear, just make sure you have a tie. So I was like, you're a big help. So I did that, and that's what came out on the other end. So it worked out fine.
Looked good, and it was for a good cause. How about you, Phillip? How are you doing this week?
I am doing very well. I am still reeling from the very fact that you, Greg, AVM, were able to get Brian King for 45 plus 15 minutes. And I told Greg I felt like it was a moonwalk. That being said, we have a few issues with his few things to talk about on that front, but we're doing great. A few things. Just a couple.
He didn't step any dog shit, so he's doing good.
Today's Wednesday. That was Monday. That was Monday. I'm feeling much better now. Let me see. Lots of interesting things going on, but mostly I'm really just thrilled at how well this came off and how I'm flabbergasted at how well the event went, and bravo to everyone involved.
Thanks. I think it was as good as we could have hoped it to be. We weren't really hoping for much, so we were fortunate to get some stuff out of them, which I think was good, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. How about you, Paul? How's your week?
So far, so good. Now we have a political party backing for reversal of the regulations here in Australia, which is absolutely huge.
Mazel tov.
Now, mazel tov's one word, but let's see if they actually come through with the goods.
Yeah.
That's going to be the question now over the next few months. But here in New South Wales, where I am, we also have an election in a couple of weeks to get rid of a certain health minister that we have here, Mr. Hazard, and he is a health hazard, so we're going to get rid of him, hopefully. And from then on in, I think the floodgates are going to open, because we'd like to turn New South Wales into the manufacturing hub of Australia. Simple as that. And then we're going to help navigate the rest of the states into getting rid of this silly prescription model.
That would be amazing.
Yep.
Well,
That's good. That's good.
3 years, well, I don't know, 2014 until now, and I never thought that I'd see it in my lifetime, put it that way.
I don't think anybody did.
Yep.
No.
Well, that's why you got to keep fighting, right?
No reason to move to Florida now. No reason to move to Florida, Paul.
Hey, hang on. There are reasons to move to Florida.
Yeah.
Right? You know, crocodile on the barbecue is actually really good. So, yeah, like gator works really well. And iguana, that also...
Iguana meat is really good too.
Yeah, look, you know, there's not much that I won't eat. And
Every little kid right now is crying. They're just shedding a tear.
For you kids, I'm crying.
Hey, and Paul, if you eat boa constrictor, a lot of people let those go in the swamps. Yeah. And on top of that, you can also alligator gar, the fish, are unlimited. They're a nuisance, and you can take out as many as you want. So
I've seen
invasive, I believe is the term, but
I've seen some really big suckers. Yeah, I want to go and play with them.
There's some really irresponsible herpetologists in Florida.
Well, I'm very handy with a bow, and I'm very good with a fishing rod. So
there you go.
I don't have a problem there at all. And
there
I'm
you
pretty
go.
good on the
Crocodile Dundee, ladies and gentlemen, right here. And last but certainly not least, Charles, how is your week going?
Good, but I just want to point out the solution to invasive species is to put them on the menu of the finest restaurants in the world. And I guarantee they'll be gone in a very short amount of time. I apologize. I'm apparently having some technical issues. The linkages, I've got a whole bunch of wires here, but I think I could charge one of my vape devices, but I can't connect to the internet directly. My bad. I'm going to probably cut in and out.
Yeah. We'll make it work.
We'll bear with
So
you.
sorry for that, but I'm doing great.
That's good. Well, welcome back. Thank you for coming. And obviously, Philip, welcome back to you too. Thank you for coming and hanging with us again. So I guess we should just dive right in here.
All right, you ready? I will start the first. Let me add it to the stream.
Like
we may all get smaller.
To agree on. Let me just take off.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Allie. I'm sorry.
Basically, how we started it out was I tried to get Dr. King to kind of admit to a few things right off the bat that I thought maybe we could agree on. So basically, I said that as a general product class, vaping products are far less hazardous from smoking cigarettes. And is that something that he thinks every adult American should know?
A few of those quickly, and we'll see if that's true. You've said that as a general product class, vaping products are far less hazardous than smoking cigarettes. Is that something that you think every adult American should know?
Yeah, I would agree with this statement that if an adult smoker were to transition completely from a cigarette to an e-cigarette, that would be a benefit to their health. Yes.
Good start, right?
Yeah.
He didn't really want to have to answer it that way.
No, he didn't, but we kind of didn't give him a choice the way that we kind of worded these.
No,
but
that was the best way to go. It's either a yes or no answer.
Yeah. Well, plus, we didn't want to kind of go off into the weeds and waste the time because we had a lot of questions to cover, which we didn't even get to cover all of them, obviously. But we tried to prioritize what we thought was most important for this first meeting. So basically, the next question goes into, the science is now widely understood. And I think he would agree. It seems obviously unethical for anyone to mislead the public into believing that nicotine vaping might be just or more dangerous than vaping, right?
Science on that now is widely understood, so I'm sure you would agree it seems obviously unethical for anyone to mislead the public into believing that nicotine vaping might be just or more dangerous than vaping, right?
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely a lot of nuances around the product class. And so although we know that in general, e-cigarettes have lower risk than a conventional cigarette, there's a broad class and there's a lot of different factors that can influence the extent of risk. And so it's not just a simple statement that every single e-cigarette is going to be lower risk. There's different factors that we have to consider, particularly when it comes to risk to vulnerable populations like kids.
And just to be clear, has FDA
You want me to go ahead and just play through with Greg's?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
ever identified a single nicotine vaping product, not a illicit THC cartridge, that could be more hazardous than smoking?
I would say that at present, we evaluate the merits of evidence that has been submitted to this agency in terms of applications and science on their products. At present, we have authorized 23 e-cigarette products or devices that we have found the net benefits outweigh the risks. And we'll continue to do that. The onus is on the applicants to submit that information, and we're fully open to evaluating that information and making an informed scientific decision.
Liar.
How many onuses does he actually say during the 60 minutes? I mean, I count 4 right off the top. Onus. How many different times did he use that word? Anyway,
Let's just say if we had to take a shot for every time, we'd be trashed at about 9:15.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
9:15 my time. I think it's 15 years.
What I loved, what I noticed he did throughout the whole interview was always put it on us that we need to
right. We're not submitting the applications, and we're not trying to do everything we can do to comply. I mean, if he said, show up to the FDA building dressed like a chicken, I'd be like, done. If that's going to get an approval, like at this point, we'll do whatever, but they won't give us a clear path. And I think that's the biggest frustration with that kind of an answer.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's important to give Greg a ton of credit for sliding that illicit THC sort of, fuck you in there. Thank you very much. Let's just say both of you did an amazing job of looking rather indifferent for the most part, not angry or just, but yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't want to discourage him from having another meeting with the industry. We don't want to be disrespectful.
No, I think that the questions that you asked and keeping it relevant and productive, absolutely. But yes, Greg, not illicit, nicotine vapes, not illicit THC products. That was just perfect.
Yeah. I desperately wanted to hit him with the valid question too, but we didn't have time for that, unfortunately.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I like how he sort of tried to be sly about giving the FDA agency some credit for the work that they've done. Up to date, we've approved or haven't approved, but they've allowed 23 different vaping devices into the market that don't have a net negative health impact and stuff. I'm like, yeah, but look at what you let through.
That are literally years old tech as well. But
and what is that? What is that continuum of risk in his mind? Like, what you do realize that the only thing you're leaving left on the market is cigarettes, right? Like that's that's
right. The nuances and the difference in a vaping device. Is there a single vaping device that can rival cigarettes in terms of harm or potential harms? Of course not. Those nuances that he's talking about, they don't actually exist. Sorry.
No, not at all.
The pat on the back was just sort of like too much to handle. And when you consider he's like 23, like that's a lot. Dude, there are thousands of products. 23 is
tobacco flavored outdated products that no one uses anymore.
That nobody actually uses it. At this point, and I was going a little bit mad. I was like, I couldn't. I was just trying my best to be calm and drink. That's all.
Yeah.
If you notice, I wasn't really making eye contact too much because I know that I wear everything on my face, and I did not want to do that. So I just kind of tried to not look directly at him when he was speaking because I knew that I was going to roll my eyes or something.
I was so proud of you.
Yeah, you did a great job. You did a great job.
No, you.
Here we go. I'll just go ahead and let him finish. Yeah.
Do you acknowledge that U.S. studies, some funded by your own agency, show that millions of people who formerly smoked now vape in America?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have science from surveillance, both among adult smokers as well as other populations, including youth, unfortunately, that are using these products. We've definitely seen a decline among kids in recent years, and that's a really good thing. We want that to continue. I think we still got more work to go there. And I will say that there's also a growing body of literature that has shown that people are using e-cigarettes to quit smoking completely. And again, that's a good thing too. We don't want people using combustible cigarettes. It's 7,000 chemicals and 70 carcinogens. But again, it's that nuance of we need to have the robust science, and it's growing, but we still need more clarity on the innovations and what products and what aspects of those products are the ones that are going to most efficiently deliver that nicotine to a smoker so that they can transition completely and quit for good. And ultimately, we've got a lot of growing science. That's a good thing, but we need more.
We need more.
Okay,
Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. No,
I feel
I'm
like he's
going to
on
pick.
Sesame Street. That's a good thing.
I'm going to pick this statement to shreds because this was one of my favorite answers from him. Because he calls it surveillance.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't like that word being used. Okay, we do have data sets. Would have been a much better statement for that, not surveillance. That's one thing.
I'm not exactly sure what he intended to mean by surveillance.
Yeah, it's what they're doing to get their data sets together.
Frankly,
That's
I'm not sure he
part of-
knew what he intended to mean by surveillance either.
Okay. Point taken. But the other interesting part is the innovation and what he talks about. Our industry has created more innovation in the last 10 years than any other industry that I can think of, except outside of the electronics industry. Okay, that's part of it. Secondly, he alluded to the fact that there's X amount of chemicals in one, but he didn't say how many chemicals are in the other. That's something else that he forgot to mention. And the third part is he didn't touch on the innovation that we're working through now, whether it be in closed systems, open systems, any of that. So that's another interesting factor. But his statement there, parts of it were good, but that was possibly the best answer I've heard come out of his mouth ever. But surveillance is not a word that should be used. Ever.
Which part was your favorite of his answers?
That there's 7,000 chemicals in a cigarette.
And 70, of course. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Because he actually admitted that.
Yeah.
And up until now, he's never actually stated that anywhere.
Well, I think too, it's like if you think it's such a good thing that people are quitting, why are you not giving more approvals? That's I think my biggest issue with that answer is if it's such a good thing, why are you not approving things that people use? Because if you're doing surveillance, then you should know that the things you're approving, they're not using.
Right.
Correct.
Well, he threw the word youth in. He threw the word youths in. That's why.
Oh, every time he finds a way to squeak in that youth issue.
The only reason I was able to forgive the let's not get into semantics BS is because prior to that, he actually said, we don't use epidemic since I've been there. And that was...
well, he said they never used it, which is not true.
Not true.
Well, he said that today at the Society for Research in Tobacco. He said that today, the FDA, blanket FDA, has never used epidemic, which is a absolute crock of
Right.
But since he has been in see how he qualified it here's, let's just say I was willing to go ahead and take him at his word, and let's just say to hear him say, not an epidemic, I don't use that term, I forgave him for mentioning how we shouldn't get into semantics because semantics. How about tobacco-related deaths versus combustible tobacco-related deaths?
Right.
Okay, that's semantics.
Right.
Yeah. Valley versus valley.
Charles, we'll go ahead and let you jump in. I know you've been having some issues, but go ahead. Uh-oh. No.
My system is going screwy, and I need a new connection.
You want to jump back off?
It's very important that he raised the issue of innovation.
Yeah.
Sorry, my connection is so bad. because innovation makes things safer. But the FDA has killed innovation since 2016.
Right.
Correct.
Yeah, you're gonna have to try to
the-
get onto your Wi-Fi. Are you using data off the cell phone, or are you using the? Yeah,
I've poured through my entire connection gizmo. I don't have the one that would connect to.
Oh, okay. We'll let you jump in when you can. We'll let you jump in.
Connect me to.
I think he's trying to say that he needs a gigahertz
Yeah.
wired connection.
Yeah.
Which I understand myself, between having the gigahertz wired connection and having my vape charged, I would charge my vape.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Charles made a good point about how innovation has been stifled by the FDA, the PMTA process, everything. I believe there is I don't know if this is on the market in other countries in the UK, but I believe Juul has a second or third iteration.
Yeah.
I just saw it.
Yeah.
I just saw it the other day. It was like a blackberry tobacco that came in the new kit.
I think it's, for example, I mean, they're still selling the first ever generation Juul, which is just, I mean, I've only tried it a couple of times. It's awful. So of course, disposables that have mesh coils and batteries and flavors that are much better than what is compatible with that first generation, of course they are taking off everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's, I simply can't decide if Brian King, number one, he's way over his head and he knows it. There's no question about that. Does he care that he's way over his head, and does he know a great deal more than he's letting on, or is he simply that oblivious to this particular, the entire tobacco harm reduction? I mean, it's very possible that he knows that little about what is going on in terms of the vaping space, because
I wonder how long he's going to be able to use that card where I've only been here 7 months. I mean, he's going to eventually need to stop saying that.
Well, the question is, does he actually have the ability? Let's just say he wants to do the right thing and follow the science, given that he is a epidemiologist, as he points out. Do you believe him when he says he wants to do what's right for adult smokers, or do you believe that he's simply covering his ass long enough to where it's a moot point?
I think we'll find out. I think we'll find out in a few years how he truly felt when he leaves and goes to like Altria or Philip Morris or.
Ooh, big call coming from Ali there. But I personally think that he hasn't really dived into, like, since deeming regs in 8816. I don't think he's really dived into what the industry has taken upon themselves. You're right in saying that coil technology, Philip, and flavors have come so far in that period of time, but in the last 2.5 years, even under pandemic conditions, the flavoring industry has gone forward in leaps and bounds in creating new and improved products simply because.
In the meantime, even stores where I live in Alabama, which is, we've always had a very vape friendly local government, are being visited by the local alcohol beverage board, saying that they need to get rid of some of these products by X number of time, even though I think they're doing it in a ceremonial fashion. That's happening here in Birmingham recently, and I'm trying. Vape shop owners are actually calling me, asking me what's next, and I said, well, I'm not sure, but yeah,
Call a
marketing.
lawyer. Call a lawyer.
Yeah. Well, crippling any industry, a great way of doing it is stopping innovation. And I think that was their move. They knew if they could stop all this flooding of stuff, and it kind of worked for a while there, but right after that happened in 2016, I think we got flooded with all kinds of new stuff. I mean, new hardware was just flying in left and right. Some companies weren't even waiting 2 months to come out with version 2 of their RDA, and it was getting it to a point, and then it kind of came crippling down. I mean, but their move was to cripple this industry, and a great way of doing it is stopping innovation. Making sure none of this new stuff gets to the consumer.
Right.
But that's when China stepped in and just said, "Look, enough
Fuck
is
you."
enough." No,
as far as I know, China was never out.
Yeah.
No, the key was with China. They, after 8816, they turned around and they said, right, well, how do we flood the market with whatever innovation we have at hand right now? Let's see what, it's just like throwing spaghetti at the wall. Okay? You see what sticks. And a lot of that early technology has stuck, and it's become better and better and better. Coil technology is possibly one of the biggest innovations over the last 5 years. And anyone that understands that side of it, they have to look at it from that perspective. The second thing that has also become very, very big is the flavor technology, the way that flavors are actually used, or in some cases overused, but also then the flavoring companies taking it upon themselves to remove the chemicals that were noted as being sort of suspicious. These are the innovations that we've done.
Well, innovation being stifled, coupled with suddenly products that people are still using, suddenly becoming, quote, illegal. And he seems to know a lot about law enforcement for being an epidemiologist. All of those things are a recipe for absolute disaster. These things are going to make life for people who have quit smoking, for business owners, for everyone involved in the vapor space. It's going to become more dangerous. And it's going to be, the Wild West. And he seems to be either in denial of that, or he's just that clueless. And let's just say he's a convincing bureaucrat for the least bureaucratic bureaucrat.
He's well prepared for sure.
Well, so where's the science behind approving the Logic tobacco flavor, but then denying the exact same product because it's a menthol? Where's the science in that decision, which is something that was his decision? So, I mean, I really don't, he kind of reminded me of like a car salesman. Like, you really want to believe him that the car is going to be great when you drive it off the lot, but then you break down like a half a mile down the street and they're like, oh, you bought it as is, you signed that.
There are a lot of car salesmen that are pissed at you for saying that.
Sorry,
right now.
no
Tim wants to say something.
You're absolutely right.
Tim wants to say something. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I'm curious as to what science goes into the PMTAs in order to try to prove the net health benefit, and then they counter that with what their science says to see if there's some kind of an alignment. And I don't know, maybe I'm wearing my own tinfoil hat, but what studies does the FDA have to substantiate any any agreements to the fact that people switching to vaping, or it's healthier for them, it's better for them, to help them transition away from cigarettes? And then you look at the product lines that they've allowed to go through, and I don't know, there's just something on the back end of this that makes me think they kind of know that these somewhat crappy tobacco flavored type things aren't going to be that successful when you compare it to the things that we can use today with the flavor choices that we have, the devices, so on and so forth. We're probably more likely to succeed. Whereas someone who's new and is going to transition to whatever it is they've allowed to get through, they're going to be able to pull up these numbers and go, see, we told you vaping's not successful, because people are just not interested in the flavor and the taste and the performance of the product.
I've got to the point now where with a lot of these tobacco-based products that have been approved, if you look at the ingredient list of what they've got in them, and the ingredient lists are not easy to get your hands on, okay? There's something in that ingredient list that they all have in common that, guess what, we don't have in our liquids from this side of the fence.
Right.
And that's something that needs to be addressed. And that was a question that I tried getting through to him because I wanted that addressed. There is something in their formulations that we're missing that is like an automatic go to the next stage, like in a game of Monopoly.
Gotcha.
And that's what I'm seeing. And that's every single product. They all seem to have either it's a single chemical or a group of chemicals in them that they're allowing through.
Right.
What is it that I'm missing?
I mean, Juul had to have had the same thing, and they got a denial. So, I mean, you can't
Yeah.
tell me that there wasn't. I mean, I know how many studies were. I mean, they went above and beyond with their science, and
Correct.
and still got denied. So, this decision making doesn't make any
Yep.
sense at all. They're not basing it on science. They're
No.
basing it solely on what they think youth is using.
Yeah.
Right.
Correct.
I think that's the
But
only
youth-
study they care about, really. Go ahead.
Youth-
Go ahead, Charles.
Youth are not using Juul now. They're literally
Right.
not using Juul.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're
And-
not.
And Juul is being sued for billions. I'm sorry. I may have
You sound perfect
Sound
now.
better. Yeah.
I may have made a connection that works a little better here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A couple of things. So, Brian King is super smart. He will tell whichever audience is listening to him exactly what they want to hear.
Right.
But a couple of things just to point out. These are pretty simple devices. Like this is not rocket science.
Right.
And so it's strange for him to say that each one is different. So we just don't know about all of them, which is sort of like saying each automobile with seatbelts is different. So we don't know if seatbelts save lives.
Yeah.
His discussion of misinformation was really interesting. And he wants to enhance the CTP's efforts on risk and nicotine to inform the public, but what's really curious to me is he does not want that would be the truth, right?
The truth.
He does not want the truth to be inadvertently delivered to teens. So, I mean, just think
Yeah.
that one through.
Yeah.
There are a number of things that are troubling here. I love that he wanted to enhance engagement with stakeholders. I love that my connection is working now, apparently.
Welcome to the show, Charles.
You have no idea how many plugs I just tried to plug in.
Yeah.
I do think we need to push Dr. King to establish some kind of panel of informed adult people who are ex-smokers who use safer nicotine alternatives, or even smokers too. People who are smokers, using people first language. So if FDA is actually moving in that direction to actually listen more, this is a super good news because he seems to say like 1,000 times, his door is wide open.
Yeah. Let me start the next question.
Do you believe he's sincere when he says that he wants to apart from the onus and follow the law, all those things he wants? He believes that these products can help smokers quit when used entirely. Do you believe that he wants to do the right thing, or do you believe that he is literally doing what he has to do to speak out of both ends of his mouth? I'm curious to know what your take is.
He's sincere when he says that. We just have to understand that the FDA, especially CTP, is under immense political pressure right now. I mean, and who's creating that pressure, right?
Let me start this next question, guys, here.
No
Quitting
question
smoking
he's
is
number one.
extremely difficult, and I know that firsthand. And most people using FDA-approved NRTs fail at that. Can we agree that more options and a variety of solutions that are available, the more people will successfully quit?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree completely. I think innovation is a good thing. And I think the innovation is on both ends. And so, of course, we have to make sure that we're continuing to grow, we're continuing to evolve. We follow the science to make that informed decision making. But it's also mindful to remember that we have parameters in this country in terms of how we regulate those products. And so if it's tobacco products and you want that authorization, it's got to go through that pathway. If you want to promote your product as a cessation device, we have that pathway as well. And ultimately, it just comes down to that evidence and making sure that that's delivered to the agency. And so for my part, over Center for Tobacco Products, we're committed to evaluating the evidence that comes in and makes those determinations. That's what we'll continue to do. That's what we've done. We've authorized e-cigarettes in the past. I can't speak for my colleagues in the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, but if an entity wants to submit an application,
Always covering his back, huh, guys? Always covering his back.
for a cessation product that's an e-cigarette, they can certainly do so, and we would evaluate that application on the merits.
He seems legitimately like a fish completely out of water, as if he really stepped into something that he doesn't quite understand. It's back to what Charles says. I want to believe that he is interested in reforming the process, and he is interested in listening to consumers and stakeholders, and that's what I choose to believe. But let's just say he comes off as extremely. He's very effective at not letting his ass show. Yeah, that is for sure. But a lot of his answers are they seem
non-answers.
they seem strangely, rather than evasive, they seem strangely like non-answers because he simply doesn't have one.
Yeah.
Or that.
And he doesn't want to say too much either. He knows. Who
I notice he starts to speed up too as well when he feels like he can't answer something. You notice that during the interview, he kind of speeds up. I mean, that last 4 sentences was like that. I mean, there was no thought. It was just right out.
Yeah.
I was a little off put by at times his sort of condescending retort, the way he kind of like spoke to Allie and Greg as though they were like children, you know.
Yeah, like I said, he's on Sesame Street. That's a good thing. Like I'm like,
yeah, and then he's like, well, and there's a way that we have to go about regulating these things. Like,
you know how science works, guys, right? I'm like, but do you know how science works?
No offense, but it doesn't matter
he didn't
what
necessarily graduate top of his class. No.
To me, it shouldn't matter on what pedestal you get to stand when you have professional people in front of you. You don't need to talk to them like they're little kids. They're here because they have, information that, counters your position. But still, that kind of ticked me off when he would do that.
I would say with huge compliments to Allie and Greg, the questions were very well crafted. You had clearly thought this all through ahead of time. You did force him to carve some things into stone, and I think that you guys did a super great job.
Thank you.
No question. We're being hypercritical, but the fact that this event went off just splendidly is, I do believe it's a milestone for just about everything I've seen in terms of, for as long as been a CASA member. I mean, let's just say that the fact that we were able to do this and do it as well as it did, I can't come up with a word for how much gratitude.
It wasn't easy. I mean, AVM worked before I was even on board with AVM, they were trying to work on this interview, because we're not, PAVE, so we don't get the call and say, do you guys want to do a webinar about vaping? Hey. So, I think it took a good 7 months to nail down a date. And that was just of consistently hounding him. But it is possible to get a meeting with him. And I suggested that, everybody try to get a meeting with him if you're, because the more we talk to him, the better, I think.
Remember what he said at the end? He said, my door is always open. My door is always open.
Our policies have gotten worse and worse in the United States, but I can't imagine such a senior level public health official saying what he said. 4 or 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
we need to recognize there is some progress.
Yeah, for sure. I just wish that the outcome would be a little different moving forward, that to back those things up. I think that would be what we all want to see.
Yeah. Let me put this back up.
Thank you. With the preliminaries out of the way, one topic we received many questions about is misinformation. So, of course, FDA Commissioner Dr. Robert Califf has made combating misinformation one of his top priorities. And as you have acknowledged, the American public's understanding of nicotine is not in line with the science. Approximately 80% of Americans, including a majority of adults who smoke combustible cigarettes, believe vaping could be just as hazardous or worse than smoking. As well, Rutgers University researchers funded by CTP have documented how healthcare providers suffer from that erroneous misperception as well. Additionally, I'm sure you're aware that the research from the PATH data and other studies show that when a smoker or ex-smoker understands that vaping is less hazardous, they're more likely to stick with it. And so you have been on the job for 7 months. We can't blame you for anything that's happened before those 7 months. But in that 7 months, what have you done to begun to combat misinformation among the general public and medical professionals?
So I would like to acknowledge that I'm fully cognizant of the misperceptions. And as I've noted before, I'm a scientist. I follow the data, and there's definitely studies that demonstrating that there's misperceptions. And also when it comes to interventions to address that, you also have to look to the science. And so for our part, I am wholly open to enhanced efforts by the Center for Tobacco Products to message not only on the continuum of risk, but also misperceptions related to nicotine. But again, the devil is going to be in the details there in terms of making sure that we have scientifically defensible messages and that we're delivering it to the target population, which is adult smokers, and not inadvertently delivering it to the unintended populations where there's consequences, including youth. And so in terms of the work we're doing, we have initiated formative work in terms of qualitative studies to assess adult perceptions around nicotine. And ultimately, we hope to use that to inform public messaging. But again, the data is going to drive it. And so any campaign or any broad scale work has to be informed by this formative work. And so we have initiated that, and I hope to continue it. Our Office of Health Communications is on top of building that formative work, and we hope to continue that moving forward and help inform potential strategies. I do think there's more opportunity here, and I think that we can be more transparent. We've said that in the release today around the Reagan-Udall evaluation, that there's definitely opportunities here, including through enhanced engagement with stakeholders, but also our public communications, including on our website, to make that more clear. If there's anything that folks know about me, is I aim to be the most non-bureaucratic bureaucrat that you've ever met, and that involves just straight shooting. And so if we can do better, I want to know about it, and we can definitely enhance the communication on that front. So I would say more to come, but the science is going to drive it, and we're at the initial stages in informing what effective messages are most critical to reach the target audience without unintended consequences.
I can see Philip's wheels are spinning, man.
Well, no, I think that imagine Mitch Zeller joining us for a conversation and saying something like that. He would, he would sooner dig ditches for a living than do that. Even Gottlieb, at the height of his pro-tobacco harm reduction rhetoric, he would not ever engage with industry and consumers and say something to that effect. So on that front, this is unprecedented progress. Please.
No. No, it's not. We need to parse out what he just said. He said, we want to deliver correct information to adults, but we want to be very careful that that correct information does not get to teens.
So I'm wrong. Is that what you're saying, Charles? I'm wrong. Okay, well, let's go ahead. Okay, so here's
to me that's stupid.
Literally what he just said.
Yeah.
So that's the other side of the coin. Do we believe that he actually knows about the focus group studies in which, in 2018, in which it showed, kids who saw the word epidemic were just scared to death, but it also showed that adult smokers were completely dissuaded from trying nicotine vaping. Is he know about this?
Right. I mean, all of that is still publicly available, and the results of that focus group that showed the use of the word epidemic, for example, is highly effective in discouraging teen use. But it's alarming that it also discourages adult use. So we're going to be laser focused on just delivering that message to teens, brain worms and so on.
Yeah.
And that hasn't really worked out. So he does get on with that, especially it was Allie who asked this question about brain worms and
metal demons. Yeah. I had to do.
Nickel.
Demonic possession and so on. Like, what the hell? But anyway, so all of those messages are also getting to adults and having the predictable effect on adults. I remember at the eSig Summit last year, I asked a panel, like, what would happen if we had a diabetes medicine where there was a massive propaganda effort to convince 66% of people with diabetes that this medicine is as harmful as your diabetes. How many people would use it and how effective would it be? And they were just like
tongue-tied.
I should have phrased it as more of a question. But anyway, this is what we've done. We've just screwed the pooch.
Yeah. Well, to me, doesn't a lot of that go back to the CDC as well with the misinformation? I think that needs to be addressed as well, because I think that gets thrown out of the picture all the time. It's like they had an obligation, and I think they didn't take that opportunity to inform the general public at that time what was truly going on. And we lost a lot of vapors. A lot of vapors went back to smoking because they were so afraid of vaping that e-liquid,
And he was part of that group.
Right. Right. Exactly.
There are rumors that he actually himself coined the term e-valley. I don't have any idea if that's true. But do you believe that he actually is still trying really hard not to be part of that debacle and defend that position? Is that because we didn't get a chance to ask that question about a valley, because that would have taken up an hour.
Yeah.
But do you believe he's still trying very hard not to look like the villain in that respect? Is he?
Well, he always mentioned his colleagues. He's you have to.
As many times as he can.
I just wonder to what extent that is driving his decisions when it comes to changing what it says on the CDC website. Like, Canada, at least they have changed it to, V-Alley, what have you. I just wonder how, I don't know, let's just say how self-conscious he really is about that.
Yeah. And another part about that youth thing that kind of bothers me, don't we want the youth to know that this is a better product? I mean, because they can end up becoming smokers and choosing cigarettes over vaping when we know vaping is much better. And to me, okay, you have this target audience and this target. Well, if I knew what I know now 25 years ago, I would have chose vaping instead of smoking. I would have went that alternative instead of buying a pack of cigarettes. So this is splitting us into two groups is bullshit, because I think that generation should know that this product is better, is safer, and it doesn't have the 7,000 chemicals and all that nonsense. So to me, splitting these two groups and it just, to me, makes absolutely no sense. It should be one fucking message. This is safer. This is better. That's it. It shouldn't be split into two groups. That's how I think.
But that's
especially if the youth is smoking, that's the whole thing. If they are smoking, you're scaring them to stay smoking.
Yeah, they're going to keep smoking.
Yeah.
Tim, go ahead, buddy.
I was just going to say, it's just a little ironic in the sense that now the messaging that we're going to rely on, despite the fact that we talk to people in our own small little circles, but we're going to have to rely on their messaging to be the one thing that probably sways the public's general impression of vaping as a whole. And I'm talking about people who don't have a dog in the fight, aren't vapors, not smokers or whatever. But it's funny how they created the monopoly on it, though, in that the FDA prevents anybody from delivering any kind of a medical type statement that states that it's safer for you or healthier for you or better for you, or will, I mean, obviously we can't make false claims like, it'll completely cure your COPD or something like that. But so they take that away from our side completely. Like we can't even say anything positive in a legal sense, whereas they can go full shit, batshit crazy on the other side and put out all this crazy messaging about brain worms and
erectile
demonic
dysfunction.
Yeah, so I find that a little like an unfair fight. It's like you get to say the absolute
It's nice to have a
worst
scapegoat,
thing.
isn't it?
Yeah, you can say the absolute worst things that are false, but we can't even say things that are true.
Yep.
So come on, man. Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Check your blood pressure, Tim. Check your blood pressure.
I'm alive.
Glad to hear. And you're bringing up how the formative scientific research has begun, but for at least 5-6 years, the former director of CTP and other CTP employees have spoken at conferences and repeatedly said that correcting misperceptions around nicotine is something CTP wants to do. So are you saying that before you entered the job, zero progress had been made on figuring out how to message the truth to adult smokers and the medical community?
No, I wouldn't say zero, but I will say that we have a lot of competing priorities in this center. As has been evidenced by my first 7 months, a lot has happened. And when you have a finite number of resources and people, you have to prioritize what you do to have the greatest impact. And so I will say that for my part, and coming into this position, there's 4 key tenets that I am adhering to, and that's strong science, stakeholder relations, communications, and health equity. And so obviously the stakeholder relations and communications are pivotal to this. And so in terms of my prioritization, I think it's important that we engage with people, hear them out, but also use the science to inform our communication strategies moving forward. So it's not a knock that we haven't done this work before, but it's where prioritization is moving forward. And I can tell you that we're working on it. But again, the science is going to drive it. And just because you do a study doesn't mean that it's going to give you the answer that you want, or that it's going to provide the necessary information. And, that's how science works. And you continue to do more robust research until you get a solid evidence base that will help inform a strategy for comms. And that's what we've done for our public health education campaigns among kids. And now we're beginning formative work as well for adults.
Charles, you said this today in a tweet. I asked a question at this point and never got around to it, but that's fine. But you said it much better than the question I asked. The question I asked was, are we not on a timetable? Is time not of the essence here in terms of getting the word out to adults who smoke cigarettes? And you said this today in a tweet, and I have to say this is just pitch perfect. You tweeted, perhaps healthcare ethics should matter in addition to the science. I used to teach science, healthcare ethics to medical students. The instant we know markedly less risky than combustible cigarettes, not promoting them for adult smokers is profoundly unethical. And I could not agree more. The idea that we are waiting and waiting and waiting for that perfect RCT or that perfect moment where, oh yes, this is much less risky. We can go ahead and promote these to people who smoke, who are still dying at 500,000 a year in this country. What you said there about the ethics of not acting on that information at whatever, whether they be 50% less harmful or whatever, is profoundly unethical. Please, I'm going to shut up now. Go ahead.
So Brian, he later on in the discussion constantly falls back on, well, Congress told us to do this, so we have to do it. So keep that in mind. But I thought it was really, we're probably going to get to this as well, but it was really telling when he said actually, I have the quote, we did have to pull the foot off the accelerator when we saw the marked increase in youth use of e-cigarettes in 2017 and 2018.
Yep.
Actually, 2017 was really low. It was like 12%. It's lower even than it is now. But 2018, it started to go up. And I mean, that's very interesting, because what it really shows is that underage use, which nobody wants, is more important than adult deaths.
Cessation.
And that's where the issue of bioethics or healthcare ethics comes in. I have, honestly, I'll tell you guys, I've tried to get at least a half dozen bioethicists who I know around the world to get interested in this, and they will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. But I think this,
why.
yeah, this issue of the as Dr. King says, the benefit to adult smokers versus the net risk to kids is what they're trying to weigh. But the FDA's calculations ignore the fact that 100% of deaths are among older adults. 100%.
100.
Like, it's not even up for debate. And so, as I often say, use can change. And it can and does demonstrably change. Like 2 out of 3 Americans who start smoking in their teens later quit, right? Right, but death is final.
Can confirm. So
You don't get to change your mind if you die.
Yep.
It
So
shows.
it does become a healthcare ethics issue. We don't have anybody with the gravitas from the healthcare ethics field to weigh in on this stuff.
Let me put up the next question here real quick. I hate that smirk. I hate that smirk.
Leading journals have examined the impact of FDA's advertising, in which vaping is portrayed as being possessed by demons, shape-shifting metal dragons, something that you fish out of the toilet.
Hold on, I gotta stop laughing.
He's like, is there a question? It's like, yeah.
I like how Allie delivers this all deadpan.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen his face as she was progressing through that sentence. I would just have loved to have seen his face.
When I heard this,
legendary moment.
When I was listening to the actual cast itself, I had beer coming out my nose. I was in fucking tears laughing. I did not know how to take it. I'm like, you actually got that in there?
He got it in there.
Yep. Or products that'll cause huge parasites to crawl through your skin. I personally talk to adult customers every single day who see these messages and are terrified. Can you see how the FDA itself has become the main contributor to misinforming and scaring adults in a way that keeps them smoking?
I'll say that we do rigorous evaluation, both before and after the
rigorous.
And all of the youth-centric ones have very targeted strategies to reach that target population. And we cognitively test them and do science in the beginning, and then we evaluate them on the back end. And that science has shown demonstrably that there is a beneficial impact. That said, I think that we've got opportunity for better public engagement on our campaigns. We do solicit input, and we've done that in the past. But as we noted earlier today with the Reagan-Udall evaluation release, we are, looking to expand efforts to make sure we get feedback, including from the public. And that's for the full continuum. It's before the campaigns start to get feedback, and then also on the back end in terms of science around evaluation. But we're also proceeding forward with formative work to more objectively look at what are the best avenues to get feedback from people. And I think that we frequently do, listening sessions, and that's good. We have public engagement, but ultimately it's helpful to identify what are going to be the most effective ways to get that information from people. That is a critical component of our work. We don't function in silos, and we want the opportunity to engage, but we've got to give people that opportunity. And if they've got data, if they've got evidence to demonstrate that a certain message or a certain target audience is going to be problematic in terms of the campaign, we welcome it, but we've got to have the data and they've got to submit it. And so for our part, we're ramping up efforts to make sure that we do get that information and we do hear from people.
So just
semantics.
The data show that
exactly.
The percentage of American smokers who are misinformed about the relative risks just keeps increasing.
Yeah.
That's it.
I see the ads all the time. I'm watching Hulu, adult programming, like not something that my kid's watching sitting down here with me, and I see them all the time, and it's always the ads I can't skip, and I get so
The real
pissed
cost
off.
of the Truth Initiative own late night Hulu,
Yeah.
like,
Oh
with
my
ads.
God, you
It's
can't avoid
ridiculous.
it.
I had to switch to no ads so I could get rid
Yeah,
of it.
but
Yeah.
that's my kid. That's past my kid's bedtime that I'm seeing that shit. So how do
It's
you
on
justify
programs
that?
that are,
Yeah.
TVMA, I believe, at least. Well, that show that you guys were joking about, Dean and what's it called?
Supernatural.
Supernatural,
Right.
baby.
Okay. Let's just say that that's the kind of show that it would have vaping ads in between.
Oh
Yeah.
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 Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, but that's on the CW when a lot of kids do watch that.
Yeah.
But why do I see it all the time?
Yeah.
And that's
I
my
stopped
question
using
is,
Hulu
yeah.
for that reason because I just
Yeah.
couldn't take it. I
You
mean, it was
remember when
one
they
after
used
the
to
other.
have like cursing after 9 o'clock on broadcast TV? They should stop the anti-vaping bullshit after 9 p.m. Sorry.
Right,
Yeah,
right. When
exactly.
the curses come out, the ads go away.
Well, one of the things I noticed is he always mentions science, their science, but he never tells you who he takes the merit, what science is good, what science is bad, and where is he getting his science from.
Who are they asking? I don't know anybody that vapes
But
that
more
I know
importantly,
personally that's
they're
been
trying
asked.
to dissuade kids from vaping. Where are they promoting vaping for adults who smoke? Where?
Where?
Right.
No-
Plus, like, I
nowhere.
watch those shows with my son. So if I'm watching Supernatural, I'm still an adult that's seeing
Cinemax.
the ads.
Yeah, and
I
then
wouldn't
Michael's put
wouldn't
it there.
know.
Philip brought back some great memories. Up all night with Rhonda Shears.
We can make a really good comparison here because in the UK, where the government is actively promoting nicotine vapes for adult smokers, 57% of adult nicotine vapors have quit smoking completely. But in the United States, where our public health agencies, the FDA and the CDC, and also the American Cancer Society, American Lung Association, American, what's the other one? Oh, American Heart Association,
Yep.
the body part associations. They're all actively discouraging adult smokers from using these things. And in the US, only 40% of adult smokers, of adult vapors have quit smoking completely. So that's a huge difference between the UK and the US, especially when you understand that there are 6 times more people in the United States than in the UK. It has it seems to me that's very telling that we're actually actively discouraging smokers from quitting here.
Right.
And that just to get myself into hot water, that's literally going to kill people.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they say laser targeted toward youth,
Yeah.
they have anti-vaping campaigns laser targeted toward youth. There is really nothing laser targeted toward adults, people who smoke. When you have one message, and that is vaping is bad, what other message is there for people who smoke?
Well, do you think that the advertisement?
I was discussing this with Jim McCarthy the other day, and I mentioned that my understanding was that in late 2018, the FDA had prepared a PSA that was going to go out to all the American public that was going to explain to them what nicotine is and what it does. So it was going to demystify nicotine. And that never saw the light of day.
No way.
Right? So my assumption is they put that on mothballs because teen nicotine vaping started to go up in 2018 and they had to declare an epidemic. So that would be interesting to like go back and demand that they try to find that, because I'm sure it's there on somebody's computer.
Okay.
What would you tell people? You would tell people that nicotine does not cause cancer or heart disease or lung disease, given that
this was 2018, you say?
Yes.
Wow.
Do you think this coincided with the focus group study on what messaging worked?
This is Gottlieb stuff, so it would have been about the continuum of risks. And if you're going to try to get people off of the truly harmful products that deliver nicotine toward safer products that deliver nicotine, then you'd want them to know that nicotine is not the thing that kills you. I think that they had that prepared. And my recollection is that I learned this around the time of the New York University conference that Ray Naura and David Abrams had set up, which was really interesting. It's the only conference I've ever seen that had people on both sides. So it had Mitch Zeller was there and Matt Myers was there, but also people on like our side of the fence.
It was, you're right. It was 2018, and all of a sudden, the message that was going to go out was completely shelved. And right at that period of time, there was also a huge injection of funds into all the nasties. Magically, all this funding just appeared, and 2018 was the kickoff point for it. Bloomberg and Gates at that time, and the Wood Foundation, all three of them injected funds to, from my understanding and what I can recollect of that, was that they told them, no, you can't say that. We'll fund this another way. That was my recollection of what went down. But I do remember that conference, and from memory, it's on YouTube somewhere. I'm going to have to find it and rip it and pull it apart just for shits and giggles, I think.
Yeah, about that message part, about getting our message out there. I mean, is there advertisers that are out there that would take our money, and would they run those ads? And
no.
What
see,
money?
that's the problem you run into. I mean, that's any advertisement. Can I put a front page? Can I run a front page article right now in my local newspaper saying how amazing vaping is as a consumer? No. Is anyone going to print that? No,
not allowed.
No.
Not allowed.
No. Yeah,
I've tried this over and over again. I wrote a very simple article just 4 or 5 months ago that simply looked at the NIH and the CDC numbers from the Monitoring the Future survey and the National Youth Tobacco Survey, and concluded, hey guys, teen nicotine use in the United States is lower today than it has ever been in the past 50 years. Nobody would touch it. I tried every major media outlet you can think of, and every online scope, Vice or what, like every Vox or what, everything you can possibly think of. They all rejected it.
Yeah, I couldn't even see a media marketing company even wanting to jump on board.
We were told that it would cost us,
despite the 23 products the FDA has authorized. Really?
Well, no, we were told back in 2019, late 2018, early 2019, to do a set of 15-second advertising blocks on a specific network. It would take anywhere in excess of $2 million just to do that. And that was only for
that's chump change.
Okay. But okay.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. It's not like I have $2 million laying around, Paul.
For the other side, that's chump change. Okay.
Yeah.
For our side of things, and the amount of money that's been wasted in, and I'll say this openly, the amount of money that's been openly wasted in advocacy has become, pretty bad.
Yeah.
If everyone had joined forces back in the day, all the different groups together and pooled all of their resources, yes, that could have happened. There could have been a few very good messages go out over the airwaves. But because you've got ad companies and all the other sponsors, we were told that a lot of the other sponsors would actually drop off if anything positive came from our neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Was this pre or post V-Alley?
This was pre. This was pre.
Okay, because that's something that we can look at forever, and it haunts me how many people to this day believe that nicotine vaping has something to do with the lung illnesses, and how many people are still smoking because of that. I would have loved to have asked Brian King if he has any idea the damage that did. But there was nothing that anyone could have done better in that situation. Who could have seen that coming, really?
Yeah.
And more importantly, was it negligence, or was it something that they saw an opportunity to do to discourage something that they didn't like? Who knows? Who cares? But it was.
We should have pulled all our money together and ran a Super Bowl ad. It's what we should have done. We should have done that.
Well, that was a target, and
that was.
They said
there's no way Fox would even run that. Well, maybe Fox. Right. Fox maybe.
Well, no, I don't agree, because that's Murdoch, the Murdoch empire. No way in the world you're ever going to get a look in there. But we looked at that just for shits and giggles, and I think it was $15 million for a 10-second spot.
Yeah, that's not
really.
Let me jump into the next question.
In December, I'm sure you have your subscription still to the Journal of Nicotine and Tobacco Research, the December edition, and it featured a study where about 160 or 116 adult smokers, daily smokers, are randomized to either view FDA epidemic ads or view no ad. Those adult daily smokers who viewed the epidemic ads rated e-cigarettes as more harmful, less effective for quitting, and reported lower switching motivation. Does that study concern you?
I will say that it does, but we've got to look at the preponderance of the evidence and also the rigorous nature of the science. And so when we do make scientific decisions, we've got to look at all the studies that have been conducted, and then we have to look at the rigor and the limitations of specific studies. And so we can't cherry pick individual studies to meet a preconceived notion. We've got to look at the full bolus, and that's what we use when we make our decisions around the communication strategies we do, the decisions that we make around regulation. And so we definitely want studies that are showing the true accurate impact on different populations. And then we use that to inform our strategy, similar to what we do with the application reviews around weighing the net benefits and the risks. The same as we got to look at the available science and then make an informed decision based on the impact of those estimates, the noted limitations around those studies, and what that net benefit risk is. And right now there's a preponderance of evidence demonstrating the effectiveness of these campaigns among kids. And we continue to refine our target strategies to make sure we're reaching that key population, which is youth and young adults.
And of course, there's American studies only. Everything else, Cochrane. That's just tomfoolery.
I think it shows the importance of teen use. It really trumps preventing adult death. In the current calculation, there's just no question about this. It comes up over and over again in what Brian King says. And nobody wants teens to use nicotine, right? But there's not a moral equivalence between preventing use, which can clearly change and does change, versus preventing death. Those are such completely different things. And that goes back to the need for healthcare ethicists to weigh in on this.
Absolutely. Because right now we have, when I graduated high school, I believe daily smoking in 93, I want to say it was somewhere around 15% of my class was smoking every day.
In the U.S.?
Yes, 15% every day, something like 50% once a month.
Daily. Shit,
15.
That's a lot.
Yeah. In Alabama, probably closer to 20. The point is right now we have the lowest. Kids aren't smoking anymore, and by any measure, that is one of the most important. I mean, who would have ever thought that? Even the gentleman who is no longer COO for Truth Initiative came out and said it in Cheryl's great piece from the Tobacco Reporter. Why are we not popping the champagne cork at the lowest youth tobacco smoking percentage ever? And I think it was even the CDC might have left it out of their latest report because it was so insignificant. Who knows? So we're only concentrating on that which is not killing anyone and could be saving lives. And as it's shown, kids typically don't vape into their mid-20s. There are a few pretty good studies that show that. Um, I don't know what to call that. I think Charles is right. The ethics of it are just ethics or lack thereof. When you said that no healthcare ethicist would touch this, what exactly do you mean? No one will actually come forward and explain how this is
No
profoundly
one will
harmful?
publish any of that stuff. That's what you run into. No one will publish any of these articles or anything that we put forward.
I reached out to people who I knew who had been involved in human genome studies, which 20 to 25 years ago used to be extremely controversial. And I reached out to a bioethicist who I know who were involved in the abortion issue. And to them, to both of them, tobacco control just seemed like none of them said this, but I was just reading between the lines. It was like a shitstorm. Like, why would you ever get involved in this? Because it's probably a career killer.
It's probably why there haven't been more studies done on the effect of nicotine or smoking on early onset Parkinson's.
Well, look what happened to Dr. Mendelsohn.
And yeah, I mean, we've seen it a few times now. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, they don't want to be, I guess, discredited in a way, like that they are not taken seriously anymore in their field because they're supportive of something like this, which is insane. Because if the science backs up what they're saying, it should be something that they want to talk about, but that's their career.
Do you think, Charles, that some of those doctors that you talk to, do you think in private with their patients that they go about it the way you want them to and encourage those people to vape instead of smoking or other alternatives like patches?
So these are academic.
Oh, academic. Okay.
Academic bioethicists or healthcare ethics professors. Yeah. And to be fair to them, they're just as misinformed as most of the rest of the public is. And I would have to, abduct someone and tie them to a chair and have a
you heard it here first.
polite and respectful conversation with them for like 2 weeks to get them up to speed, because there's so much misinformation out there. But I do think, like I say this often, I think we can all agree that we would like to reduce the number of deaths, and we can all agree that we would like to reduce the number of teens who are using nicotine. Yeah. We all agree. Okay, so let's try to think about how do we achieve that. But those are not morally equivalent, and I keep saying this.
Yeah, it makes no sense. Should be one message.
Because two out of 3 Americans who start smoking in their teens later quit because teen smoking just dropped 90% in 10 years, and teen nicotine vaping just dropped 50% in 3 years. Use is not a permanent state, and so but the narrative that we're confronted with is that the instant that you try nicotine, you're hooked for life. Like you're doomed and drawn into a lifetime of the horrors of nicotine addiction, and it's so wrong.
Yeah.
But it's super hard for us to confront those misperceptions. Would be nice if the FDA started to do some decent PSAs about nicotine, but I think they won't. I really doubt that they will, because they would be afraid that that's going to encourage teens to use nicotine.
Yeah, that's sad. And Philip, I looked that up, man. I was surprised to hear the numbers you said in the 90s, and I looked it up, and it was really low. I thought it was going to be higher when I was in high school, but it was really low in the 80s, and it took off in 1988.
Everybody was smoking in the 90s.
It makes me wonder, was it the music? What was it in the
Okay,
80s?
I know you blame Nirvana. I know.
So, no, Clive Bates said very seriously to me that it might have been grunge rock.
Yeah, it's crazy. I look at these numbers, and the increase is just crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
No, there was two reasons around 87
I
onwards.
started smoking in junior high school. There was no grunge rock. I mean, you can blame Iron Maiden, I guess. I don't know.
In the United States, there was a huge spike. There was a huge spike in high school smoking in the 90s, in the mid 90s in the United States. And honestly, I've talked to a whole bunch of people in tobacco control. Nobody even understands why.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing that changed was that we increased the legal age for smoking from 16.
Yeah.
It was 16.
Yeah.
I think it was 94.
19?
To 18.
18, yeah.
Well, there you go.
And teen smoking.
You told them not to do it.
You don't do this.
You said don't do it, and of course they're all going to want to do it.
I'm going to go with the Nirvana theory. I'm going with the Nirvana theory.
No. Okay.
Kurt Cobain.
I'm gonna throw one more thing in there,
because from
87 onwards, or 88.
88.
Okay, you also had the introduction or the resurrection of electronic music worldwide.
You're going to blame them?
No, I'm not blaming them.
All right.
But when you go out and partake in substances,
you
smoke.
And drink,
okay?
Yeah.
Correct.
Well,
the electronic music industry, what?
What about the just say no of the Reagan era? Okay.
That worked. It worked.
Let's go ahead and think about it this way. In the 80s, how many high school kids were actually delving into like cocaine and things like that early?
Well, correct.
Couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford it.
Remember.
88. Well, Steve Todman's right. It was rapes.
You know how many lawns? You know how many lawns I had to cut in '86 to buy a bag of cocaine? You have any idea how many lawns I had to cut in '86?
Oh, fucking here we go.
I mean, I can guess. But we're live, Johnny. We're live. Remember, people are watching. Yeah. But no one in my high school was doing what quote harder drugs. They were smoking cigarettes, smoking weed. Yes, there was LSD and mushrooms, but when it came to things like coke, heroin, that was not present. I'm curious, in the 80s, was that something that perhaps was going on in greater numbers? I don't know.
Yeah,
it
weird.
was.
It's just weird to see that huge spike right there after 88. Just
it wasn't Cobain. And
well, let's get it from the rocker. Let's get it from our resident rocker up top. Tim, was it Nirvana? Do we blame Nirvana?
No. We're going to blame Nirvana for anything. It would be the beginning of the downfall of the hair metal genre. And I don't want to go down that path because
hair metal is coming back to
got a lot of angry rockers who had to suffer through the 90s and feely music. People getting into their feels. It wasn't about it wasn't about back seats and pounding beer anymore. Anyway, I sort of feel like all my friends in the 90s all of a sudden started smoking strangely too. And I don't really know what the catalyst for that was. I can't say that it was culture or, music or anything specific. It just seemed like that became the kind of trendy, cool thing to do.
Yeah,
like everybody went out and drank beer and smoked cigarettes. And I mean, I was good until I was about 14 or 15 years old. And then I was mad at my mom and dad and went for a walk and ran into a buddy and he was smoking Marlboro Reds. And, after I swore to myself I would never smoke cigarettes, there I was smoking cigarettes. So I can't put my finger on what ignited it, but no pun intended.
Everybody was mad at their mom and dad, and mediums were better.
Yeah, I think so. My cousin went from this nice little Catholic girl a Catholic schoolgirl to one day just pulling up in my driveway and seeing her all in black, you know, with the huge flannel shirt that she probably stole from my uncle, and just this mean, angry look on her face, hated the world, hated her parents, hated family, hated everything. And she started smoking. I noticed it right away. I was like, I could smell it. I was like, are you like a 3-pack a day smoker? What? I mean, it was horrible. Let me pull up the next question here real quick here, guys.
Speaking of your targeting strategies, the words micro-targeted and hyper-targeted have both been used by Kathleen Crosby as well as former CTP director Mitch Zeller to describe how you're putting those ads out there, but you don't want to reach adults because, as Mitch and Kathleen have noted, you don't want to scare adults away from trying these products. So will you commit to studying and releasing demographic data on who is actually receiving these ads? Because again, as Ali said, we're getting tons of comments from people who are watching adult-oriented programming on Hulu that are getting just nonstop epidemic ads that on shows that don't seem to have a great deal of children in the audience.
What I'm committing to is continued engagement with folks and more opportunity to provide that information. And so I would encourage anyone who has information or science on any of this information, we've got mechanisms to get that information to us. I can't speak for the director of my Office of Health Communications in terms of the nuances of that work. As you can imagine, I've got a lot of different aspects of our portfolio. So the more detailed questions are best left to the subject matter expert. But for my part, I definitely think we have more opportunities for engagement. And I would recommend that anyone who has information or data that they think we should know about, submit it to the agency. And there's a variety of mechanisms to do so. And when it comes to campaigns, as I noted, we'll have more opportunities moving forward in terms of public comment to make sure that people are able to provide that information to us. It's wholly welcomed.
Yeah.
I'm not touching this.
Well, Ali brought it up, and it really makes sense. I mean, you know, when I don't know if it's up to the advertiser or the person that paid for the ad when that ad is actually shown, at what time and what channel. I don't know how all that works. I don't work in advertisement.
Yeah, I mean, you pick a time slot, and
your...
the pricing is based on the time slot that you choose to have it run.
Yeah, so why not show these ads during the Cartoon Network time when kids are actually watching TV, and not when us adults are watching
even then,
Supernatural or watching some show that, of course, our kids are already in bed.
Right. But I mean,
this is where I have a problem believing him.
Parents watch cartoons with their kids. I watched all that stuff with my son. So even then, you're still going to get that message to everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible that he could ever be that oblivious to not know the FDA outsourced all kinds of, test market focus groups and all the data that showed that, kids would be horrified, but so would people who smoke.
I think he's smart enough to act oblivious.
I think he is. The question is, does he want to change what's going on and what results? I think, Charles, and you said 2018 is when they decided not to run the PSA promoting vaping to adults who smoke. Maybe that was somewhere around the time that they were deciding, well, we've got all the data back from this simulator or whatever focus groups, and we see this works to dissuade kids, but it also dissuades people who smoke from trying vaping devices. Which way are we going to go? And they decided to go with the one that's most likely to get them applause at the end of the day.
I think it's maybe similar to what happened at the American Cancer Society. So if you guys remember, in the early 2018, they came out with a new statement. That was when Cliff was there, and the American Cancer Society statement encouraged adult smokers to switch to nicotine vaping. But they changed that. They changed their minds in 2019, and 2019 was the peak of the fad, right? They changed it.
Pre or post eval?
Pardon?
Was that pre or post eval?
It was during eval, but it was also because teen nicotine vaping had spiked in 2019. It was 27.5% of high school kids. And their stated reason for changing that recommendation for adult smokers was teen use, right? Like, excuse me.
Drink
Think about
water.
that.
Remember,
Think about
water,
that.
vapor, water. Drink your water.
So, but they also recommended that adult smokers who have switched to vaping should not go back to smoking. So, like, obviously, they knew that these things are safer, but the American Cancer Society literally decided to stop promoting safer nicotine alternatives to adult smokers because teens were using them. I can't get my head around the bioethics.
messaging.
Yeah.
You
The
shouldn't
ethics.
start vaping, but if you're already vaping and not dying, then you should continue to live and not die. That's really that's brilliant.
So in it was September 2018, the FDA announced that there was a teen vaping epidemic, and I think from that moment on, whatever previously planned PSAs that they had planned to roll out were just put on mothballs. It would be super interesting to do a FOIA to try to find those.
Yeah.
Okay, the other interesting part was from 2018 in New York where that meeting went down. Cuomo was the governor there.
Hey, so what?
We don't have time to get into
now-
all the different reasons that man is a villain.
Well, now I'm starting to see a pattern. I just remembered that he was the governor in New York at that time. And now I'm starting to see a pattern why they were all put on hold. Am I right or wrong, Charles?
I have no idea.
I bet you I'm right.
I mean,
Vaping is safer,
We
but
will
so
follow
what?
up with,
Oops, sorry.
Catherine.
So what? Don't forget that famous quote right there. So what?
I'm a foot in New York with a
Yeah.
baseball bat.
But New York is particularly bad. So,
Yeah.
so just to give you one tiny example, of the 23 nicotine vape products that the FDA has authorized, the only ones that are not made by big tobacco companies so far are the Enjoy products, and I can't purchase them in New York because they're not available in any New York convenience store, and because New York has banned online sales and mail shipments.
Yep.
So,
Do they enforce the ban on mail online? Is it enforced? I'm curious.
Yeah, no company is going to break that ban. That's
Yeah, they
it's
don't
a
want the fines.
state law.
But
So
for
I can't-
example,
They will
can't
come
do-
after you.
so
too.
bizarre because I can't access the products that FDA has authorized.
Yeah.
but your friend in neighboring states could
Yeah,
send
New
you a
Jersey,
package.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
I could get them, yeah, but
Yeah. Well, it was bad. I remember when you just saying how bad New York was. I remember we did a study. I looked up a study on how easy it was for a teen to actually buy a pack of cigarettes in New York at these bodegas, and it was 7 out of 10 had a shot. You had a shot at getting a pack of cigarettes being under 21, under 18. And to me, it's like, okay, enforce that first. Fuck, you guys are going after us, and you're talking about stopping all these flavor bans, but yet 7 out of 10 kids can walk into any bodega and buy a pack of fucking cigarettes.
you know how easy it was for me to get
Yeah.
beer
Yeah,
when I
beer
was
too.
16? I could drive a car, and all we had to do with my friends was to go up to the convenience store and wait outside until we saw somebody who looked pretty likely and
Yep.
ask them to buy for us.
Yep.
It's easy.
Yep.
So easy.
And that was to get alcohol, which is like 10 times more harmful than nicotine vapes.
Yeah,
We had a
and then
convenience store in a bad part of town. We would go around the back and we would give the owner $20. He would bring us a case of Milwaukee's Best Light.
Mickey's Big Mouths, remember? A whole case for like $3.
Those are great.
I mean,
whole
you would have
case.
thought it was the Lufthansa heist from the look on my face, really.
But in New York, it was in New York at that time. You could drink at 18, right? When you were, I think so, right? Allie's smiling up there. She's like, "Yep."
in the 70s.
Yeah, I made the grandfather clause in DC.
Yeah.
Just like by the skin of my teeth.
Yeah.
Not in Virginia. Virginia went to 21 right away. But
Look,
in DC, there was a cutoff.
I have two wonderful young men who are my sons. They both at different times when they were under 21 had fake IDs.
Yep.
It's not hard to get.
Yeah.
So this whole 21 thing is
Yeah.
kind of like a joke.
Yep.
When I got to college, I actually bought a fake Michigan birth certificate and typed it up. I actually bought one when it had the Michigan state seal on it. It was blank. I got it from this guy named Otis from New Jersey. I kid you not. Good story.
There's always some.
I typed it up. It was, it was crumpled, coffee spills, it was aged. And I brought it out to a DMV way the hell out in the Superstition area outside of Phoenix. And of course, the person at this DMV is from Lansing, who takes my birth certificate. I wasn't interested in getting a driver's license because that required, Anyway, I've never been that stupid in my entire life, but I got a real Arizona ID card. Because that's the only thing you could get a drink at any bar in Tempe, Arizona with. And let's just say that is the I feel terrible.
That's the saying every guy from Jersey. Every guy from Jersey knows a guy. Everybody knows a guy.
Yeah. This guy from Marlboro is, he's like, hey, you want one of these $100? Yeah, I found $100 and got this birthday, and it worked.
Yeah. In the 1980s, I was in college, and as a freshman, one of my best friends was, believe it or not, a guy named Bob Smith, and he was from New Jersey. And in early 80s, New Jersey's driver's license had no photograph; they were paper. They were like filament paper. And I remember taking a scalpel to the date of his birth, and removing it, and then very carefully using literally a ballpoint pen to put in a different date, and then we laminated it, and he was fine.
Yeah, that's what they forget. Kids are creative, man. They will find a fucking way.
Right. I only got the fake birth certificate once it became clear to me that the best fake in the world would not get you into a bar in Tempe, Arizona. You had to do better.
Who shows a birth certificate in a bar?
Yeah, that would be. I swear to God.
Well, I mean, if you don't try it, you won't know.
Yeah, you never know. You gotta go. You gotta go for it. Let me put up the next question.
The Health Education Office, Allison.
Yep. So, a little bit about the illicit market here. Any Econ 101 student could tell you about how sweeping government bans create black markets and a laundry list of public health harms, just like what happened with alcohol prohibition and marijuana. By outlawing 99.99% of the products applied to at the FDA, you've sparked a huge emerging black market. Surely you realize that this is far worse than a world where 18 million adult vapers can purchase legal products?
Is that a question?
What's the question?
Yeah, I knew that was. I was started laughing. I was like, "Oh, you fucker!"
Yeah.
Is it better? You have 12 to 18 million American adults who vape. Is it better that they're able to purchase the products they want in a legal market, or purchasing them from illicit sources?
So I think this depends on what you define as an illicit source. And so in terms of the work that the Center for Tobacco Products does, any product on the market that does not have an authorization is considered illegal. And so in terms of our...
Did you think you knew he was going to say that, right, Allie?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we know that already.
Yeah. 99.9% of the products that are out there now are.
Enforcement and compliance strategies. We're committed to taking action to address those that are violative. And that can take a broad spectrum of actions, whether it be warning letters all the way up to the recent actions we've taken around civil money penalties, as well as injunctions. But we have an obligation to enforce the law. And that's what we will do. That is what Congress has told us to do. And so we're committed to continue to do that. But in addition, we're also working to make sure we get efficiencies and ramp up our efforts around reviewing applications. I know this is something that folks are very interested in. We definitely have a sizable bolus of applications we continue to work through, but we're committed to making sure that we review those as quickly as possible so that companies do have that opportunity to be authorized so that they are not subject to enforcement and compliance.
Bullshit.
But
First
it
of
is
all, he
bad.
didn't answer the damn question.
In the meantime, people are dying. Kids aren't dying anymore.
He didn't answer
What is the
question,
problem?
though, that
No.
they are the reason for this black market.
Yeah, exactly.
And isn't it better to allow us to stay on the market? Maybe give some, recommendations of what we can do, age verification, strict penalties for, selling to underage. Like there are other ways to keep these options available to adults and not create this horrible black market that's not regulated and is essentially dangerous.
Charles, what's the public health ethics read on what he just said? I'd like to get your take on that.
I love the fact that he let everybody else know that everything that is out there right now is considered illegal. Yeah.
They have the right to take that away and leave cigarettes on the table for you. I find that disgusting on so many levels. I can't begin to talk.
Tim, I saw you. Go ahead.
The only thing that kind of grabbed me was how right out of the gate he was like, well, we need to be careful about what we identify as illicit sources. So let me try to put my head, my understanding in your mouth. And what you're kind of saying is, well, we don't really have a problem with the real illicit black market. Basically, we just got people breaking the law and buying safe e-liquid out of the back of a trunk. And, we kind of just would hope that people would obey the law. But it's like, what do you mean how we define illicit? How do you think we're trying to talk to you about the illicit market? Of course, we know that people can buy stuff out of the trunk of a car because somebody can't have it on the shelves in their shop. I'm talking about people that don't have those avenues, the people that are just going to buy Joe's juice out of his jacket because you don't know where it came from. That's what we're talking about, where you don't even know where it came from. So
you're shutting down reputable businesses that are helping adults that have all their products registered on your website, so you know what's in it, and you're going to shut them down. So then all that's left is the black market, and he just completely ignored that and talked about enforcing the law against some horrible vape.
If we had time, I would have loved to have reminded him where the tainted THC carts came from. States where marijuana is illegal.
I don't want Joe's juice either, Martha. Don't
worry. Hey, you don't know. You don't know. Joe might have he might have a really good.
Joseph has the good stuff.
Yeah, I promised myself I was cutting back.
Yeah, he might have the perfect mango, Tim. We don't know. We just
a valley would be the perfect example of what happens when you have something that is federally illegal and legal in certain states. I don't know if all of them were confiscated in states where marijuana was strictly illegal, but that was the driving factor behind it. Is this is something that kids wanted in states where it wasn't legal, and there's someone who's going to provide it. And
something in one state and not in another.
Did you not find it funny though that they didn't take that opportunity when we all realized that it was THC to go after that market? Did you notice there was no push attacking that market? Let's be honest, it's flourishing. Go ahead.
That's not correct. If you look at local news report in late 2019, there were dozens and dozens and dozens of arrests of illicit THC vape dealers, and it never made the national news.
No,
and it was almost as if someone from the CDC might have informed local law enforcement officials that they needed to crack down on the thing that was actually causing a e-volley.
Yeah.
I think they knew damn well what was really causing it.
Yeah.
And
Because Leafly wrote an article about what was causing it.
long like early
Long
on.
before anyone was really like, and of course, no one is going to, give them the legitimacy that they damn well deserve, as far as I'm concerned. That was, I read that article, more often than I should, and they had it dead right. And I just cannot tell you how many different ways when they decided that, all vaping products are now, verboten. My mouth just fell to the floor.
There are kind of like at least two different kinds of illicit market. One is I can go into my local convenience store because these guys love me and I speak Arabic with them and we all know each other super well, and they have a lot of flavored nicotine vape products, which I don't buy, but they have them.
They have them, yeah.
But they don't sell them to teens. Like I've had long discussions with them about this.
Yeah.
And so there's that going on. But then the other illicit market is the vape products was it?
Would it be like your DIYer?
Who are being sold out of the back of somebody's trunk. And those are sold with no age checks. So those are actually two very different things.
Well, I think we were talking about anything that does not have a PMTA.
Yeah, PMTA.
Illicit.
None of those.
Yeah, everything we have on our desks right now is illegal.
Yeah.
Everything made after 2016.
Yep.
And ethically speaking, if something is saving lives and harming no one, and it's made, it's outlawed by the government, what's the move there as far as being a truly, that is I wouldn't use that word just because I'm not a bureaucrat, but that's pretty much spot on.
Yeah. Paul, did you have something you wanted to say? There he is.
No, I'm thinking about some of these, like the questions and the answers, but okay, let's take the US out of the equation for a minute and look what we've had to deal with. We're playing with a prescription model. Hopefully that's out of the gate now, or out of the box. Now Canada is looking in certain regions to introduce a prescription model. Very silly. Very, very silly. Why are they looking at us? Please don't look at Australia for any form of tobacco harm reduction. Please don't. It's very, very, very silly. I feel for New Yorkers and now California with flavor bans in play. And I said this years ago, and I was speaking to David Gerlowitz about this recently, that if New York fell, California fell, and one of the Midwest states fell for flavor bans, you would have possibly the biggest black market on the planet. And I'm right in saying this. New York was the catalyst for a lot of the other states to bring in these very, very, very silly, like, vape laws. And, like, I might know a guy. All right, go away, Rourke. I'll deal with you later.
Paul knows a guy. Paul knows a guy.
I'll deal with you later.
Well, let me.
Yes, Charles.
There's one caveat, which is I can go out to Long Island to the reservation of the local Indian tribe.
Yep.
And I can go to their vape shop and I can buy whatever fucking flavor I want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they're sovereign nations.
Yep.
So
they're starting to get some pressure though as well, though, aren't they? Because from what I read a couple articles, it seems like they're getting some pressure now from the government as well to back off Yeah, whether or not they listen. But this brings up a question that I have for you guys, because we see what's going on in England. They have there is a lot of illegal vapes that are floating around in a country that is accepted vaping. I mean, do you think the FDA is looking at those stats, the science of what's going on over there, and not realize saying to themselves, well, look, it's open there, and they still have this problem?
Costs prohibit. I mean, well, go ahead.
No. If you understand the model in the UK and you understand the disposable market in the UK,
yeah, but you're talking about the difference between being limited to a 5 milligram cartridge to just all of a sudden I can go to the black market. 2 milligrams. 2 milligrams.
2 milliliters.
2 milliliters.
Right.
Yeah.
And 20 milligrams.
20 and
20
And
milligrams is
and
your top nicotine strength.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But you have manufacturers that are buying pod filling machines out of China, creating gallons and gallons of liquid, or liters for the metric people, and they're out there filling thousands upon thousands of pods illegally, and selling them through what is classified as a bodega in the United States and in the UK. It's just a convenience store. Okay. That is the issue that you have. You go and smash one of these, manufacturing facilities that's out in a barn in the middle of bumfuck nowhere, you're not going to stop it, because the filling machines that they've got are capable of doing anywhere upwards of 5,000 pods an hour. Really? How are you going to crush an industry like that? Well, it's mechanization, John. That's what we brought to the
2
market.
milliliters in disposables is the max in the UK.
Yeah, correct.
And for tanks too.
But disposables are legal. This holds 13.5 milliliters.
Yeah, welcome to the U.S., baby. You can't get that over there. Not legally anyway.
I'm just wondering what I mean.
Welcome to what I have in my
Yeah,
hands.
hide that.
Well,
Look, I think there's a place for regulated rechargeable disposals, but we need to figure out a way to, properly. But let's just say, in the meantime, that's really wasteful when you get down to it. Wow.
We're waiting for the new device that we talked about last week that has 67,000 puffs on it. It's shaped like a 44 big gulp cup, and
Horizon Tech already makes one. It tastes like
the lifetime pod. The lifetime pod.
I was actually. I was in London last year with a colleague of mine from Denmark, and he was telling me over and over again that in Europe and the UK, almost all nicotine vapes are like mech mods and refillable devices. Yeah. And straight across from our hotel was a shop that said that it sold vapes. So I said, let's go over there and see what they're selling. It was wall to wall a candy store.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
And in one tiny corner was a little platform with some shitty disposable vapes.
Literally a candy store?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Every candy you could possibly imagine. It would have made people from Parents Against Vape, like, it would have made their heads explode.
This is the most asinine true thing I've ever heard. Continue.
And even like I was shocked to see it. And so the UK has a problem. But all of those products are illegal in the UK, and they're all coming through the ports illegally.
Yeah.
And blah blah blah. So that's going on. But it's my analysis of why disposables have exploded, which is like taking us back to the Model T times of vaping, is because FDA prohibited flavored vape pods, things like this.
Yeah.
and so some guys in China said, hey, well, everybody's telling us that only teens use these things, so let's just like start cranking out hundreds of millions of disposable vapes in flavors.
Yep.
Ginger beer.
That's no.
Is that literally ginger beer? Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's good too.
yeah. I know
It's
it.
really, really
No
nice.
way. How spot on is it, Philip?
No, it's on point.
Is it on
It's
point?
fantastic. It's not quite ginger beer. Let's just say if you can think of like a lemony sponge cake.
Sponge cake. All right.
It's outstanding. I wish
Good
it,
old EB Designs over there, since they can't be
I
Elspar anymore.
wish it was a little bit, little
I like
too-
ginger beer.
Yeah. Let me put this
it's
back
good.
up.
If people get their products legal, that's what CTP's view would be. It is better if we're going to have a market that people are using legal products.
Yes, one would hope that people would obey the law. Yes. CTP is on the side of the law.
I'm gonna.
How about yourself? No.
Unless you're a kid.
And so
you
if-
have to over.
Sorry, go ahead, Greg.
If a majority of
feeling.
American adults who vape want and desire flavored vaping products and face no criminal penalty for purchase or possession, what gives you faith in CTP's ability to override their preferences with the relatively low market share products that have passed through the PMTA process?
I'll say that we continue to evaluate the evidence of what has been submitted to us, and the onus is on firms to give us the best available evidence to make sure that they have a successful application in terms of an authorization. And so we're committed to continuing to work with firms to make sure that they are aware of the guidance and that they submit robust applications. But ultimately, this is something that I think we've got an opportunity for improvement, but the onus remains on the firms to submit that science. And we are required by Congress to follow a certain pathway and protocol to review those. And we'll continue to do those in addition to utilizing our enforcement compliance authorities.
Is he getting tired at this point, Allie?
He didn't answer the question.
He didn't answer the question. He didn't.
All his answers are the same.
I have 4 onus, 3 bolus. Right. Okay.
During an interview.
So,
Oh, go ahead, Charles.
I'm just going to say what I think should be the obvious, which is at some point, the FDA and even Brian King is going to have to shift toward thinking about the other pathway, which is substantial equivalence, which is a pathway wide open for new deadly cigarettes. That's I'm often surprised that I don't hear more discussion of that. The other angle or direction they could go is the way, as was previously said, that the UK has gone, which is just set safety standards.
Yep.
My God, I mean, e-cigarettes are not complicated devices. They're extremely simple devices, and setting safety standards. And Brian goes on and on about how previously about how the every product's different, and we don't know if we know one is safe or it helps smokers quit. We don't know that the others do, which is also what the Surgeon General said. It defies belief, actually. You set safety standards, allow a pathway for substantial equivalence now that you have 23 products that are authorized.
Yeah.
The rest of them are not that different. Okay. Anyway, I'm preaching to the choir.
You with the Truth Initiative last year, you sort of downplayed, and you can say whether or not you think that's a fair characterization, any concerns about, quote, strong illicit trade developing because of CTP's actions. Yet today, there is currently what's approaching a multi-billion-dollar market for products that the agency considers illegal and not subject to enforcement discretion. How do you square that lack of concern for strong illicit trade with what we see in the market today?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the distinction between what we're calling illicit trade. But in terms of the References and Truth Initiative, what I was speaking to was the profound body of scientific evidence that has demonstrated over time the diminished impact of illicit trade through the implementation of population-based tobacco control policies. We've seen that with taxation in the past. We're seeing this more recently with menthol prohibitions for cigarettes in multiple international locations, including in Canada and in the Netherlands. And so that was the context for the statement that was made.
Well, listen to that sign.
No.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Go.
I'm saying so now he lumps in foreign countries and the success that they've had with tobacco control and limiting the ability for people to get their hands on certain types of products. So he'll accept those studies and that science as something he can compare their policy to. Yet they don't want to listen to any foreign or international science with regard to pro-vaping studies. So, the Royal College of Physicians or the Cochrane, like that was almost hypocritical. It's like, we'll take our success and compare it to an international crowd and say that their information and their data applies and it makes sense as to why we should do the same thing, but you won't turn it the other way around. Frustrating.
Yeah, he's not going to make mention of Sweden and snus and how many decades of science we have on that.
Science.
It's like the science, though,
But he loves the word science, but he doesn't really go down that pathway. Those two little letters in front of his name, doctor, might mean one thing to him and his cohorts.
Yep.
But personally,
he speaks to us like children when it suits him, and he speaks in terms of epidemiology when he wants to evade.
Yeah, well, he mentions throughout this whole interview that he is a scientist. He makes us all know that I am a scientist, and he pushes that
and evaluates science.
A science, yeah.
Well, you think that you'd be better at this then? That's
But epidemiologists still have differing opinions on what is an epidemic.
Yeah, he's a scientist with blinders, is what he is. He's a scientist with blinders.
it makes no sense to me because the science is so robust now across the world that it cannot be denied by the FDA, period. It's as simple as that. Some of the studies that are out now are so well put together, and you can replicate them time and time again with exactly the same results. It doesn't matter what you put through that system.
Yep.
That's the problem with a lot
of
some of the best studies come from tobacco companies.
They're the only ones that can afford the funding for the science.
Well, I mean, I can't think of any research that's more heavily and just critiqued, enormously. That's going to be So they have to produce something that's actually legitimate.
Okay, Philip, but here's the really interesting part on that one. The company that PMI bought actually went down that pathway and did all the studies on numerous products, right? Then that science was completely thrown out the window because as soon as PMI bought it, that science was invalid, apparently. Really? Yeah. Come on.
Industry people are still not.
I think that we also have.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Oh, nothing. We're still living in an age where I believe industry is not allowed at the annual Society for Research on Nicotine and Tobacco conference that's happening now.
That's this year.
It's happening.
It's happening right now. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that if you are tobacco industry, you are not allowed to attend still.
Yeah.
No.
I find it weird how he sits. He sits with his hands in his.
You'll have
I just noticed. It's like
rewind.
I kept imagining him with a slinky or something.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Does he have something down there? Does he?
It just doesn't scream confidence.
We'll be able to accomplish that moving forward.
You'll have to rewind.
I was recently at a conference where senior CTP official Todd Cecil was asked why FDA leadership had overruled agency scientists who recommended approving certain vaping products. And he responded quite plainly that if staffers are not aligned with the FDA's posture, then they should look for another job. And that just seems like a rather intolerant way to treat the scientific staff. So what would you say to FDA scientists who feel like they're being overruled for reasons that have nothing to do with science?
Yeah, I can't speak to specific comments in situations where I weren't present, so I'm not sure if that's adequately or inaccurately characterized. But I will say, as I've noted before, that under my leadership, this center is one of openness and transparency and collegial dialogue. And so I certainly don't want staff leaving because of toxic work environments or because they feel like they are not heard or that they are not being permitted to follow the science. And so I've got an open door policy. I've already leveraged it heavily with staff, and I welcome the opportunity to discuss. And if there are concerns, there are mechanisms for staff to verbalize those and make sure that they are heard so that we can resolve them. And I have made it clear to all of my direct reports, including the office directors, that that's how this center will be run. I think that we also have to be cautious too of not allowing a vocal few to represent the entire scope of the staff. And frequently people who are unsatisfied are the most vocal, and you have to make sure you have the full story in terms of certain things that are said and done. But for my part, I'm committed to facilitating a collegial and productive culture in this center moving forward. And we have a strong foundation of that from my predecessors.
Thank you. And
From his predecessors. Oh, man. You upset him with that one. You can see it in his face, Allie, with that question.
I mean, I tried like hell to get that clip.
Yeah, you can see he didn't want.
You had to sign off on those clips to be released, and I think I reached out to people that were on the panel with him to make sure that my wording was accurate. And other people that were at the conference, Greg included, was at the conference. A couple other people that I know, and I'm like, I just want to make sure that I get this right because I don't want to say anything out of what he actually said.
Right.
And they all agreed that's exactly what he said. And I remember afterwards, everyone kind of, because you go into kind of like an after, like they have like drinks, it's sponsored and stuff after the first day of the conference. And everyone was like, did anybody get that? Was anybody recording that? And I'm like, no, we just were there listening to the conference. Nobody had their phones out. Nobody was recording. And I really wish that I was, because that was, when he said that, I think everyone in the room kind of like, and then of course he took, Matt Holman's spot when he went to PMI. So that was a huge thing that he, who said that, went and then took that spot, in the interim, but still.
Let me,
one question perhaps that was asked, I didn't get the chance to read every single word of your RUF response. The Reagan-Udall Foundation noted back in 2017, Scott Gottlieb, of course, came up with the comprehensive plan. And that envisioned the FDA using regulatory science to bring products on the market to compete with cigarettes while also making cigarette addiction a thing of the past. Does the comprehensive plan still guide FDA's thinking?
Yeah, so short answer is yes. We've never abandoned the comprehensive plan, and I'm not quite sure how that misperception arose, but maybe in our ongoing formative work to get feedback and transparency from folks, it would help figure that out. But I will say that the plan has never been abandoned. It's been live on our website, and we've continued to follow several of the components of that, including the application reviews, the product standards around menthol, the work around the nicotine standard, as well as enforcement and compliance. One factor that I think is frequently overlooked is that we did have to pull the foot off the accelerator when we saw the marked increase in youth use of e-cigarettes. Back in 2017 to 2018, we saw nearly 80% increase among youth use of e-cigarettes among high school students. And so that said, we weren't able to hit the accelerator as hard given that environment. That said, I think that with the continued increase in youth use and the reductions in numbers that we've seen, we've got an opportunity to ramp up our efforts related to continuum of risk, which I know is a key component of the nicotine perceptions. I frequently hear from folks on that, particularly lately. So as I noted earlier, for our part, we're continuing to do formative work on messaging for adult smokers. But at no point has this center abandoned the plan. We just had to evolve given the landscape. And now that we're continuing to see declines in youth use, I'm hopeful that we'll continue to be able to proceed forward on all those components. For what it's worth, the new strategic plan that we're developing by the end of this year would ultimately be our new guiding framework. In terms of moving forward. The content released today is just a blueprint. Now we've got to implement. Some of the components are going to take longer than others. Some are going to be immediate, including the strategic plan work. We've started working on that already, and we're going to have a public comment period and engagement sometime this summer. So encourage folks to be involved in that. And my long-term hope is making sure that we've got both an internal plan that's very complementary and consistent with the external content so that the public can follow. These are our strategic goals, and these are our long-term outcomes. I think that the nicotine plan did that very well in terms of relaying to the public, this is where we want to go. These are the outcomes and components, and now you can follow moving forward. So we're going to follow a similar paradigm with the strategic plan in place. And again, I encourage folks to participate in the process. We want feedback and want to ensure that it's reflective of all stakeholder input.
They might approve 50 products.
Can I just let me translate there?
Yeah, go ahead.
This was a key statement. We did have to pull the foot off the accelerator of trying to help adult smokers not die. Yeah. When we saw the marked increase in youth use of e-cigarettes in 2017, 2018. And we're continuing to work on messaging for adult smokers. So it's very, very clear. This is like, you could not be more explicit here that informing adult smokers of relative risks, it takes a second seat, not even a second seat. It's like it's not even in the car. Because of teen use. And this is strange. This is very strange to me. I mean, teens should not use these things.
No
question about that. But teen use of these things is not killing people. And so I'm constantly flummoxed by this kind of logic.
I was actually wondering, do you think that there was more money being poured into anti-smoking campaigns in the early 90s than there is being poured into anti-vaping campaigns now? Because I think they probably...
No.
I think at the very least, they're comparable. And with Mike's new contribution of $420 million, just because he doesn't like it, it's...
Yep.
I mean, this is romper room. I mean, this is beyond insanity. It's quite literally the most devastating mindset that I've ever known. I simply can't believe. And politically speaking, it's a lot of people that have a great deal of common sense when it comes to vice. They, legalizing marijuana, harm reduction for opiates, et cetera, et cetera. Yep. Some of these people will turn around and tell you that nicotine vaping is the worst thing on the planet, and it's just unbelievable.
I would love to see an analysis of funding. I mean, so there are two different things. So there's funding for research in tobacco control, and then there's funding for messaging, right? And all of that was put on steroids after the master settlement agreement. As we all know, states put 2 or 3% of what they get, of the millions of dollars they get, into helping adult smokers quit. And
crosswalks are important.
They put the rest of it into building hospitals and schools and roads and things. But I would love to see more like a rigorous analysis of where the money's going. My assumption is that, if you just look at the numbers, way more than 9 out of 10 the Americans who are using any kind of nicotine or tobacco product are adults, but way more than 90% of their investments are focused on teens. And I think that's strange too.
Yeah. Well, let me get to some of the people that before, because we're running a little late here, but I wanted to get some of the people that were asked to come on and do questions. Allie, you know who these are, so you can better let me know who they were.
Thank you all for having me on, Dr. King. Thanks for
hold on right here. Yeah.
Taking the time to be grilled.
Oh yeah,
Jacob Greer.
Yeah, it's Jacob.
Okay.
Jacob's great.
By this tough audience today, we appreciate it. So we've had a lot of questions.
That was a Dr. Evil laugh, was it not a Dr. Evil laugh? I mean, seriously, that was a Dr. Evil laugh.
On the supply side of vaping, which is obviously very, very important, and I think we've covered a lot of that. But I also wanted to follow up and ask about the supply side of combustibles, because back in June, FDA announced that it was planning to implement some kind of very low nicotine standard for combustible tobacco. It was very vague in the statement about whether this would apply just to cigarettes or what the other products might mean, because we also have mass market cigars, we have pipe tobacco, we have premium cigars. So my question for you is whether you see this low nicotine standard applying across the board to all combustibles, or whether there might be some differentiation in the different product classes?
Yeah, so good question. And I'll say that in typical bureaucratic form, we have processes in the FDA. And so we announce we intend to propose something, we propose it, and then we finalize it. And so right now we're at that first stage. And in our announcement and our intent to propose something, it was focused on cigarettes and certain other combustible products. I will say that as a part of the rulemaking process, we do have a public comment opportunity. And so no decisions have been made at this point. We intend to proceed forward with a proposed rule, and at that point it will go public, and then we ask for feedback and comment, and that can be from anybody, from scientific researchers all the way to just the general public, and we encourage folks to submit information to tell us what should be included or excluded, but at present it will be proposed as cigarettes and certain other combustibles based on the announcement that we made earlier this year, but again, the rulemaking process follows a specific standard over time, and that includes incorporating comments from the public. So encourage folks to provide feedback and, importantly, the evidence. Frequently with our campaigns, like with the menthol, we got 250,000 comments, and many of them are just form letters. And I'll tell people that's not helpful to us. If we get 200 people submitting the same thing, it's not quantity over quality. We need the quality in terms of robust evidence to demonstrate the benefits or the risks of what products we would include in terms of any potential product standard around nicotine.
Thank you.
There is your key answer around nicotine. All right.
Well, we know now that form letters are not working.
Answer. No, but there's your key answer. It's all around nicotine. Okay? That one key point.
Well, there was a very interesting study that came out today that showed that menthol was increasing smoking amongst Black females, I think. It was a pretty interesting study. I didn't get a chance to look at it closely, but his reasoning is just interestingly flawed.
Yeah. Well, I don't understand it. Maybe I'm naive, but I mean, nicotine isn't a new fucking thing. It's been around for quite some time. Not just our government has been studying nicotine, but it goes all the way back to 17 something. I mean, that it's been researched. It's not a new thing. It's not a new product. And I find it hard to believe that we don't know, the general public doesn't know that much more about nicotine, and what benefits it has and how it can harm someone. I mean, there's studies out there that show that it doesn't cause cancer. This isn't the reason people are dying from smoking cigarettes. I mean, couldn't I just run an ad that just says that?
If you want to spend your millions on that, John, you go right ahead.
I mean, why? I mean, you don't have to say that vaping's better for you or more or less harmful. You don't even have to say any of that. This is what hundreds of years, 100 years of research on nicotine has proven. And here you go. Here's the facts. Read it. And I mean, that's not saying, you know.
John, he's an epidemiologist. He understands this, okay? He knows these things.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, if you ban menthol cigarettes, not only is it showing that you really aren't interested in, public health equity, you're not. There's a lot of evidence to show that it actually increases smoking in minority groups, and most of all, it just. Does he have a clue as to how easy it is to go ahead and grab a few flavor beads off the internet and make your own? Yeah. All you're doing is you're just changing who is making. Okay, you're essentially giving your money. You're banning one thing. Your cigarette sales are not going to decrease among the group you're saying you care about, their health. How many people are smoking these products, and to claim that menthol is more addicting than regular tobacco cigarettes, I find that dubious. I've read a few things that would indicate that, but nothing that would make me forget how little that. I don't know, Charles. Is there any truth to that statement that menthol cigarettes are more addictive than regular tobacco cigarettes?
No, but menthol, for some people, menthol cigarettes are easier to use, right? So, and by the way, my father always smoked menthols. I used to hide his cigarettes, which he did not find funny.
No, my kids did that too.
My mom felt similarly. Yes.
In my school, I was told that cigarettes kill people, so I didn't want my dad to die, but he did die. He died of COPD, which is a horrible way to go.
Yep.
And he smoked 2 packs a day, menthols. But are they more addicting? No. Menthol doesn't increase the dependence-forming nature of nicotine the way MAOIs do.
What is the rationale? The rationale is that the tobacco companies have targeted minority,
urban cities
with these really tasty, easier to smoke cigarettes, and we need to ban them to protect them from themselves. It's just, that's a little.
Well, I'm not an apologist for the tobacco industry.
No. I'm just saying the rationale. If you have this,
well, they always use the thing of people of color. But honestly,
the whole. But what they've done is to. Figure out what their markets are and try to get more people in those markets to use their products. Yeah. That's what any company does. Yeah. It's not an evil, malicious thing.
Yeah. No, I don't doubt that. I'm saying our government trying to protect these people for their own good. That's I got a colonial sort of a vibe to it if I ever heard one.
Oh God, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there. I mean, it's been used for 8,000 years.
Yeah.
And over the past 100 years, it's probably the most extensively studied drug on Earth.
Yeah.
And then weirdly, it's also the most completely misunderstood drug on Earth. At the same time, that's weird. That's truly weird.
Yeah. Let me get to this next. Let me get over here.
We're going to Mark.
Vapor products now
Mark
for 9 years.
Oh, who is this again, Allie?
Mark.
Oh, okay.
And eventually I bought the vape shop where I successfully quit. And since then, I've helped thousands in my community to successfully quit smoking with those same products. The same products you're now wholesale eliminating. So I have a 2-part question. First, as a business owner, I've owned a business that FDA Tobacco has forced me to operate in limbo for 7 years. Like every other business owner, I need to make decisions for the future. I have to enter into contractual obligations. I have a responsibility to my clients. Can you tell me in plain language whether or not you are going to approve or authorize any flavored open system vapor products going forward. Or should I abandon my clients, close my doors, and cut my losses now?
Now,
Second,
you want
to go ahead.
No, whatever,
go ahead.
you prefer. I'm happy to do double question, but whatever.
Go ahead, if you can answer
In the interest of time, we'll just leave it at part one.
Okay. So first, congratulations on quitting. Like, monumental achievement, and definitely keep it up.
Pat on the back.
I'll say very briefly that the center does not have an outright ban on flavored products, but the onus is on the applicants to submit the evidence to demonstrate that the benefits among adult smokers outweigh the risk to youth. So there is no a de facto policy within this center that would prevent the authorization of a flavored e-cigarette. But I will say that with the continued high rates of youth use, the onus is high to make sure that to demonstrate that a benefit to adult smoker. But, you know, it's not impossible. We've seen the authorization of several products already, all tobacco flavored. But we are certainly open to applications on flavored products. And if the science demonstrated that there was a net benefit compared to the risk, we would authorize it. And so that's my take home here is there's no blanket policy against flavored, but we've got to follow the science. And at present, we have not got sufficiently strong evidence that demonstrate that the flavors are needed for the adult smoker to quit. And that's why that comparison with tobacco flavored and other flavors is really critical in the applications. And that was outlined in previous guidance we've given, and it continues to be the case for all flavors, including menthol.
The science. I mean, doesn't the fact that I don't know what the number is anymore, 14, 15 million people will continue to vape and continue to use flavored e-liquids to continue to not smoke have any merit whatsoever with him?
The onus is on the producer to show that Mark can or cannot continue to serve, 80,000+ people in terms of smoking cessation. I don't know how many different ways he has just done amazing things for people who smoke in his part of the world. But that was the worst non-answer to a really good question, a straight question that I've ever heard. And yes, let's talk more about the onus. Yeah, what exactly is he doing for Mark's clients who really do need his help, as it turns out, because, well, everybody else is either out of business or selling, glass pipes.
Yep.
Right. I mean, we submitted that stuff. I mean, with 16 locations, I think 75,000 people in the database total, and we just pulled the numbers from like when T21 went into effect, and I think it was less than 2% of our customers are buying tobacco flavored e-liquids. So I mean, how does that not show that they need flavors, because that's what they're using?
I always say it this way: it was a couple of crappy tobacco flavors that helped me stop smoking. It was a variety of flavors that helped me quit.
Yeah.
If I had nothing but 36 milligram totally wicked, God, that was the worst stuff ever. It wouldn't have gone well for very long. I would have gone back to cigarettes. And then I found Gorilla Juice, and the rest is history.
I mean, just like Ali said, I mean, if they were just to even take all the vape shop sales numbers and website sales numbers on e-liquids and what flavors are being sold to these people, I mean, that's enough to realize that this is an important element to helping us quit smoking is flavors. I mean, the numbers, was that required of you guys to show the FDA where your customer is, what they're purchasing?
I mean, what's required for PMTA is different every month. So
every month. And of course, you guys couldn't get into that because it would have taken up the entire hour. It would have taken days. But how many different ways have they changed the standards, unattainable standards that are cost prohibitive in ways that I can't even begin to go into. It's just.
But if you look, we're just operating in South Carolina. We can't ship anymore. So if you look at that, you look at all the customers we have, and you look at how much we've done in the state of South Carolina, I don't understand how that doesn't add up. That's necessary.
The science doesn't add up. The science.
You know where he can get the science from? all he has to do is just take a standardized poll on 100% of adults in America and get a rate at which people buy shit with flavors.
Yeah.
Because that makes them buy it more.
Yeah. I
Take
can't wait.
anything, ice cream, soda, anything where flavors and alcohol, you know.
Just look at Nick. Well, okay, yeah, there are thousands of flavored alcohols,
Yeah.
and the number of teens who are using flavored alcohol is pretty similar to the number of teens who are vaping flavored e-cigarettes. It's like 8% or so. But the thing that always gets me is nicotine gum.
Yeah.
Right. And you guys have seen me say this, but nicotine gum is literally candy.
Yeah.
And it
Gold
comes in
fruit
fruit flavor, fruit medley flavor, cinnamon flavor, menthol, and mint flavor. And the pharmaceutical industry doesn't make tobacco flavor. Why? Because no adult smoker would ever buy that.
Nope.
And if you don't buy it, it's not going to help anyone quit smoking.
Right.
And I was Paul's going to say something, but I was completely shocked at the age allowed to buy gum in fucking Australia. Nicotine gum blew me away. I had no idea it was that low. Paul will tell you.
What age?
12.
12.
That's kind of arbitrary. Why not make it 11 or 13? 10.
Fuck.
What the hell happens at 12 that makes you able to make that kind of call?
Is that by a doctor's prescription?
No, that's you can actually walk into a store. If you're over 12, you can actually purchase a pack of
Bill's Bait and Tackle.
Well, no, you can buy sprays, gums, patches if you're over the age of 12. And I'll add this to what you're saying about the products that were available. And I actually dove into GSK, who creates most of these, or Nicorette, like GlaxoSmithKline. Yeah, Pfizer and GSK, both of them. The other caveat to this is they did a study when they wanted a modified product brought to the market. They tested tobacco flavors. No one would use them because you had 2 variants in the studies. The 2 variants were that any of the tobacco flavored products also came with a very peppery note to them, which was quite interesting to me because when you're using a tobacco flavor, unless you're using high grade pharmaceutical nicotine and then you add your other rubbish into a gum or a spray, it becomes peppery. But all the others, because of the sweeteners and everything else, then bada bing.
How do they know they're 12? That's a good one. I mean,
no, and I had
because I don't know too many.
I had a couple of photos of a kid walking with his mother. He would have been about 12 or 13, and I actually pulled the mother up, and I was asked to remove the photos from Facebook. And I said, why is your son throwing a pack of like the fruit gum into your shopping cart? And she said to me, he has ADHD and he doesn't like the medication, but if I allow him to chew this while he's either doing his homework or before school,
that's smart.
This kid knows, and it blew my mind. And the mother reached out. I blacked the faces out, and then I got a 21-day ban for doing what I did.
Facebook jail, baby.
No. But I actually asked the mother, and I put the whole story there of what was going on. And the kid got tweaked out hard on the medication, but I said, how do you even know about nicotine to the mother? And the kid's response was, through his mother, that he stole one of my vapes. And
yeah.
no, and was completely calm the whole day. I went, ooh.
This is
science.
Truly, this is maximum crazy, because a huge number of kids with ADHD or autism or Asperger's are being prescribed amphetamines, Ritalin, drugs that clearly change developing brains, right, and so we know for a fact that people who are prone to smoking are self-medicating with nicotine. Yep. And this is, by the way, I think this is our this is a winning hand. I mean, I think the weakest card in the entire house of cards that has been erected against harm reduction in our field is nicotine, and it's specifically therapeutic nicotine. And we need to remember that the thing that tilted the needle with cannabis was medical marijuana. It was people telling their life stories, convincing journalists, convincing politicians. This helped me. And our best allies, and by the way, really a huge amount of people who are staunch advocates in our field are adults living with ADHD or Asperger's or autism or bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or you name it, any neurodiversity issue. But I think going back to the nicotine gum, I think in the United States it can be prescribed to children as young as 12 in the United States.
Oh, wow.
By a doctor.
By a doctor, yeah.
Correct.
If they're a smoker.
Yeah, wow.
So, like, clearly, nobody thinks it harms developing brains if you can do that.
Yep. Well, I remember when I first started vaping 10, 11 years ago, there was somebody that was doing a study, and I thought it was a brilliant study, but it was about weight loss and using vaping to help people with their cravings at night. Yep. And I never found anything out about it. I don't know if they just quit doing it or they never shared the research.
No. The study is available. The study was out of the UK and it's still being used. And
wow.
The study is actually going on further and further now. That people that have eating disorders, that want to go and eat a whole pack of cookies,
a tub of ice cream
or whatever. No, there are, and they've now said that certain milligram nicotine strengths work to actually curb the craving completely. And if it's either a dessert flavor or a specific fruit flavor that they don't want to eat after a certain time. And by the way, Peggy, if that's you, Peggy Whitmore, hello. You're 100% right, because patches are also used for seizures in hospitals where children are having type seizures. It also works. So many benefits of nicotine.
I mean, let's not forget the mind study that they're doing too.
Yeah.
It's not funny. Yeah. And I am right. Yes, it is Peggy Whitmore. She's down in Florida. She's friends of friends. And yes.
Well, I'm going to shoot this next question. That's the last one. So.
Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Very well. Thank you, Dr. King, for taking my question.
Hi.
The LGBTQ population is one that I serve and one that has an unfortunately high smoking rate. Does it make you cringe to see groups serving this community putting out boilerplate anti-nicotine messaging that infers that all vaping by adults is a public health hazard? And are there plans to deliver targeted, adult-oriented, realistic messages regarding the relative harms of vaping versus smoking?
Yeah, so I will say that certainly admire the work you've done with the LGBTQ plus population. Certainly a priority of mine, as I've said previously, around health equity. And on the second point, answer is yes. We're continuing to work on formative research to look at the best messaging that's scientifically defensible, but also is going to register with the population around continuum of risk and also nuances around misperceptions of nicotine. But in the interim, I think we've also got immediate opportunities. When I came to FDA, I noticed that our web content in particular is incredibly dense, and you shouldn't need multiple abbreviations after your name to understand very simple things. So I think we've got opportunity on multiple fronts, longer term to get the science around the most effective messaging, but in the near term, maybe saying things a little more succinctly. They can still be defensible, but not necessarily a scientific diatribe on the web. So well taken comment and agree with you.
Thank
Sure. Our final, thank you, Victoria.
You guys want to touch on it? Phil's shaking his head over there.
God bless her. That's
yes, God bless her, and shame on him. Yeah.
There's an important point to make. In the United States, almost all of our smokers are like literally, obviously, those least able or willing to quit, but they're almost all now among our most vulnerable communities, and that includes low-income people, and it includes adults with mental health issues, and it includes the LGBTQ community, or it includes people who are unhomed, homeless, and it includes our indigenous population, American tribal people. It's totally a social justice issue now.
Yes, it is.
We need to hammer at that.
And,
I think that was a point Jacob Greer made several months ago during a CASA. Anyway, he was joining CASA for a discussion, and he did mention how he felt the best way to combat the issue of what's going on is as a social justice issue, and I couldn't agree more.
And the last question, unfortunately, Grim Green couldn't get on because he was Mike. I guess he was live streaming it, so he couldn't jump on with his questions. But I get
focused in her vape shop operations. Vicky, are you there?
Oh wait, is there one more before I hit Nick?
I think Nick is the last one.
Oh, okay.
Nick is the very last one.
Outweigh the
there it is.
Audience. His question is, when you look at adult usage today and the effect on population level health, is there a level of youth usage that we could achieve where what we're seeing with adults would in your mind outweigh the risks to youth? Is there a level of past 30-day use that you are targeting other than zero?
Yeah, so I think it's important to make a distinction between individual and population level. And so I think the expectation that we're going to get to zero, we've never seen that with anything. So that's unrealistic. But we have to look at the merits of the individual applications that are submitted. And so in terms of FDA's responsibility, we have to look at the net risks and benefits. And that's what we'll continue to do. And it's ultimately going to depend on the evidence in that application. And so as we continue to see that decline among youth, which is a good thing, the bar is going to get lower in terms of documenting the net benefit among adults, but ultimately it's going to depend on that science. And so I can't reinforce enough the importance of folks ensuring that they have robust as possible the application so that we've got the evidence we can use to inform a marketing decision. And so it's not so much individual numbers that make a broad scale decision, it's looking at the individual merits. And in the context of the current environment where we're seeing declines among kids, that's a standard where you may not need as much evidence among the benefit among adults, but you still got to demonstrate it, and that's where the science is going to come in.
Science.
Okay, so this is an interesting one because on one hand he's saying that vaping is a much that it's vaping is not nearly as risky if kids aren't doing it for adults who smoke. That's I don't want to pick that one apart. On the other hand, he's saying there is a threshold at which youth use would drop, and they might actually approve some e-cigarettes that are effective, including flavor.
When all the
Well, see,
small vape shops are shut
he was
down.
good enough not to provide that information because he's the least bureaucratic bureaucrat in the Charles, what do you think?
I think that was a positive statement. I think he's signaling that. So put yourself in his position. If you're now going to authorize as appropriate for the protection of public health, like 100 new vaping products, there will be a shitstorm, and he knows there will be a shitstorm facing the FDA then. The FDA is luring teens into a lifetime of the horrors of nicotine addiction, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But he's saying the bar is lowered because teens are not using as much, because obviously teen use is far more important to them than preventing adult death. But
him not getting spanked is the most important thing, right?
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I used to work at the Department of Health, right, for like 10 years, and we would get these inquiries from Congress, and everybody in the agency where I was at NIH, and then I was elsewhere. Everybody would like panic when we got a congressional inquiry, and have to answer it, and it is that way. That like Congress really calls the shots. So I mean, ultimately, the thing we have to do is to educate members of Congress, and like go up on the Hill and do training sessions, educate, do congressional briefings, and almost like 99% of the people who will come to a congressional briefing are the staffers. That's kind of a good thing because those are kids. They're literally kids in their 20s who are maybe more likely to get it than their member. But that's an angle, because I mean, I've seen members of Congress tell their constituents that 1 out of 4 teens are vaping daily.
One.
Yeah, 1 out of 4.
Oh, okay. I thought you said 1 out of 14. I was like,
remember when the FDA produced an infographic that was literally inaccurate?
They're so profoundly misinformed, and part of the reason for that is the way that the CDC conveys the information, right? So they'll say X number of kids are current users, and then 2-3 paragraphs later they'll say among current users 1 out of 4 are vaping daily. And then instantly the member goes to their constituents and says 1 out of 4 teens are vaping daily, when it's actually 1 out of 38. And journalists do the same damn thing because of the way this is conveyed to them. They're so misinformed, it's unbelievable. And
if you had told me 10 years ago that current use meant this, I would have asked you why in God's name would they try and convey the information that way.
Current use does not mean what your common sense would tell you it means.
But your messaging, you're trying to reach people that aren't scientists, who don't know the science, who are looking for numbers that can be understood. Why would you convolute it in such an idiotic fashion?
Yeah, exactly. Well, guys, I want to say thank you to Ali, and it was amazing you getting that opportunity to interview him, you and Gregory. Real quick, I wanted to bring up the poll that we had. How many vape devices do you use during your day? 15% said 1, 28% said 2, 22% said 3, and shockingly, 35% said 4. That's out of 40 people. I was surprised at 4. I'm trying. I don't have enough pockets for 4 devices. I usually carry two with me.
I think I've used 4 during the show.
Okay, yeah. But Philip, if you're leaving the house, I usually grab 2. The second one's usually a backup, just in case. Look at Paul.
I bring something pocketable and something if we're going to have a seat.
Yeah. If you're going somewhere for like a couple hours, how many are you going to grab to leave the house?
Let's just say I've always been a considerate vapor. If I'm in a place where I can vape a large, box mod, I'll do that. Prefer. But if I'm anywhere where I could be in the line of sight of people in general, least of all, kids, I will make sure that I'm stealthing the hell out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, guys. Hey,
I want to reiterate.
Yeah.
Huge compliments to Ali and Greg.
Thank you.
Let me get my clapper out. There's a clapper.
A lot of work went into that interview, and it really.
It's a moonwalk,
yeah. A significant.
Thank you. I'm glad. I wanted to just, get you guys the answers we've been waiting for, at least some of the ones that we've been waiting for, and I know that everybody had a lot of questions, and he did say that we can submit them, and we are. So
right at the end,
we'll let you know if we get any feedback on the rest of the stuff we didn't cover.
Yeah, I like how he ended it.
Have been planned any better than it went, truly. So
he let you know that he might not have enough time or staff to look at all the questions, but he'd be more than happy for you to send them to him.
The onus is upon us.
Yeah, it's on us.
The science.
The science.
Damn it, let's get him that science.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to thank Philip and Charles for joining us, and thank you again, Tim and Paul and Ali, for doing what you did for us. And we will see everybody next week, next Wednesday. Don't know what's going on. I have no idea, but we'll figure it out and see what happens. Again, thank you guys for joining us, and thank you everybody in chat for joining us. And we'll see everybody next week. And where is that button? Right there.